Mount up! We're coming!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and yes, Tuesday morning left guard with Jeremiah Sirles is back, so we'll get that to you in just a moment, but just want to lay out the show for you tonight. You'll hear from Jeremiah Sirles, great conversation, and then we'll jump in, answer your questions. We'll go over the Vikings unofficial depth chart that is up on Vikings.com as we go into the week. And then Maggie Robinson is back to go through the Robinson rundown, where she's going to look at some predictions by executives around the league for this season. A couple of them are pretty interesting, but not going to waste much time here. Let's jump right in to Tuesday morning left guard with myself and former Minnesota Viking Jeremiah Sirles. Hey everybody, we are back with Tuesday morning left guard. It is year 5. Jeremiah Sirles, Matthew Coller. We have been doing this for since 2020. And I remember our early days, Jeremiah, and I got to say it was not the best. Those first couple of weeks of 2020, we've been through the roller coaster of a fraudulent 13-win season, a somewhat fraudulent 14-win season, a coach firing, a quarterback drafting to arrive at this moment, sir. And I got to tell you, this is the most exciting year yet heading into the season for week 1 of Tuesday morning left guard. Welcome back, Jeremiah Sirles.
Hey, I could not agree with you more. I mean, you look at across the landscape and there's exciting veterans that you're super sure about, young rookie quarterback that there's still a lot of question marks, but also really excited about what the future could hold for him. You have one of the best wide receivers in the world, all the weapons around. You got a suspension looming still with one of your best receivers. Like, what more could you ask for from a content creator for the Minnesota Vikings than what we have walking into week 1 right now?
It has been one heck of an offseason, too, for the Vikings and training camp every single day. I've never done it before where I tracked every single pass.
You did not.
I absolutely
Matthew,
did.
No, I absolutely did. No, don't be that guy. No.
You had to be that guy this year. You could not be that guy. Now, I tried to keep everything in context and stay rational about this and not overreact to every single incompletion and interception and all that when it came to judging McCarthy. But how could you not? If I'm out there at practice, I got to keep track of everything that's going on with the quarterback. And my final takeaway, though, was that it was overall a very good training camp for JJ McCarthy. And I think that if you were every single throw that wasn't completed in the red zone losing your mind, you were probably going too far with this year's camp.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things with young quarterbacks in camp. I've always been on the side of like, you don't know what the coach wants him to work that day, or you don't know what the purpose of the period, right? Hey, it's 3rd down and short here. We want to really work the tight end today, or we really want to work Jefferson deep today, or whatever it is. So I do always kind of laugh at the training camp charting, because it's just one of those things where it's like, I love getting on Instagram. It's like, Shadur Sanders went 12 for 25 today, and I don't know what happened. Or it's like, Kenny Pickett, 9 of 11. It's like, oh my God, please stop. Like, I just can't with you people all the time with that piece of it. And then when the ESPN grabs onto it, it's like, look at what happened in training camp today. That being said, I have so much faith in what McCarthy is going to be able to do, not necessarily because of who and what McCarthy is, but because of what Kevin O'Connell's done with every quarterback that's been in his system. And you look at what he did with Josh Dobbs. You look at what he did with Nick Mullins. You look at what he did with Kirk Cousins. Now he's got this shiny new toy in McCarthy and feels like he has a good handle on what he can and what he can't do. I'm very excited to see how far Kevin lets him run early on, or how far Kevin tries to hold him back early on. But again, it's just another fascinating storyline.
Well, that is a great lead into exactly what I wanted to talk about with you, because you go back to the best team that you played on, 2017 Vikings. I felt like that team had a very clear identity. They knew exactly who they were. It was a run the football first, play action off of it, throw it up in the air like we'll see where it comes down every once in a while. And usually it was in the hands of Thielen or Diggs. And then it was play the heck out of defense. And I think every single game that the Vikings went into that year, we knew exactly what it was going to basically look like. But it's always hard to pin down those things sometimes. You know, does a team have an identity or not? And I think when a team doesn't do well, that comes up. Well, this team lacks identity. I want to know what your definition of that is, and then what you think it will be or should be around JJ McCarthy this year.
Yeah, that's a great point. No, anytime you hear a team talk about the identity of the football team, when I hear that word, I go to, okay, if the identity is we're a run football team or a pass football team, that means that no matter what our opponent does to us, we should still be successful with the things that we do great, right? If you're a rush for play coverage in the back end identity defense, it doesn't matter what the other offense is. We're going to do that and we're going to be successful at it. And, you know, you hear a lot about the run game identity. I think this is where you can really get yourself in trouble or be really solid. The Vikings in the last 3 years haven't had a true identity run game. It's been a little sprinkle of pin pull, a little sprinkle of inside zone. Okay, maybe a little duo power in the middle. Like there hasn't just been a, hey, we're going to line up in this formation and we're going to run it, whether it's 4-man, 3-man, 5-man front, whatever it may be. And so I do think that you talk about the identity of this football team. They have the best wide receiver, if not a top 2 or 3 wide receiver in the world there. So you know that the identity is going to run through 18. Rightfully so, right? The problem is it's not like when you have a Saquon Barkley where you can just turn and hand it to 26. Like there's a middleman piece there that requires the identity to get through 18. And that's where I'm very curious to see if O'Connell's going to really say, okay, we have to get 18 going early in the year. We're going to make McCarthy, get him rolling, and that's going to be our identity. Or is it going to be, hey, let's roll on more Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones and this new revamped offensive line that we brought in with Will Fries, Donovan Jackson, Ryan Kelly, and get the run game going to allow 18 to become part of our identity. And that's where I think this team needs to start is, hey, we pay guys up front, right? We drafted capital. We pay guys up front. We have 2 of the best tackles in the NFL. Let's start our identity with not putting everything on number 9. Because that can go feast or famine. And if it goes great. But if it goes really bad, trying to revert back to, okay, now we're going to run the football is a lot harder than starting the season out with, hey, run the football, get up in front of the sticks, put ourselves in third and manageable, and then let 9 do his thing instead of putting so much on number 9 to start the year.
And I think last year they had a very, very clear-cut identity, which was Sam Darnold, you throw that football down the field. Like that's it. Ball that way.
500 mystery package all the way down all the time.
And sometimes that meant Sam Darnold, you're going to get sacked for a 14-yard loss because you're trying to make crazy plays and crazy throws downfield, and he took too many hits and they didn't run successfully in the second half of the season, and et cetera, et cetera. But at least, you know, they knew who they were and they figured that out as they went along. I think with this offense, well, first of all, what I'd like to see is them run a true outside zone running game, because when you look at the histories of both of these running backs, and I think that hiring somebody else from the outside to come in that used to work with Derrick Henry, the assistant offensive line coach, I think that system was more outside zone based when he was there with Derrick Henry. And that fits Jordan Mason. That fits Aaron Jones. It's their histories with LaFleur, with Shanahan. Like those guys are rooted in that outside zone. I think it's better to play off of for play action because you get JJ McCarthy on the bootlegs, on the move sometimes, where even if the other team blows it up, usually you have a check down for 5 yards to a tight end. And if they don't, you get a shot play and you can also scramble off of those. So there's a lot of really good options there. But if you're running like inside stuff all the time, then I think it becomes a little harder to get him on the move the pocket, get him away from pressure. But overall, I mean, we know that, you know, O'Connell is going to push the gas pedal down with the quarterback. They're not going to play it super safe all the time. What I'd like to see their identity is we can do anything that you're telling us we can. Oh, you're going to take away the deep passing game. Well, we're going to have Adam Thielen and TJ Hockenson underneath. Oh, you're telling us that you're not going to pay attention to our run game. Now we're going to have this rebuilt offensive line, slam it down your throat, put Josh Oliver on the field, and like, here we go. That's what I think they've built in terms of the group of weapons. I guess the big question is, will Kevin O'Connell fully buy into that? Or is it going to be, well, the passing game's not working, but it will eventually. So I'm going to keep, this reminds me of a basketball team with good 3-point shooters, but they're not just 3-point shooters. You can also go into the paint. You can also make mid-range. So why not do all of it?
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's enough weapons on every piece, every position on the offense that we should be able to take what the defense gives us on any given Sunday. I just know from covering Kevin O'Connell, it's in his DNA that if at first the pass won't succeed, try and try again, right? Like that's just how he's always worked, because we've seen it with, okay, Downs is in, we're going to run the football. Nope. Send it, right? Nick Mullins is in. Okay, we'll probably rely on them rolling. Like, you can't tell Nick Mullins he can't put that football anywhere. Like, he's going to send it. That's my only concern, is that when things get hard or when things get hairy in an opener, right, Kevin O'Connell's going to go to the playbook that he knows best, right? And I'm also super interested to see in the opener in the first couple of weeks, what are defenses going to try and take away from us? Like, are they going to come into the game plan and go, hey, we're going to make 9 beat us? Right? Like, we're not going to let Mason, we're not going to let Jones, we're going to get big up front, and we're going to make number 9 beat us with his arm. Or are people still so worried about Justin Jefferson being able to go psycho mode and TJ Hockenson and Adam Thielen that they're going to be like, maybe we shouldn't make 9 beat us, right? It's just really going to be very interesting how teams play this Vikings offense initially and make us adjust in real time. Because that's the other piece of it, is, like you said, if, hey, what are they doing to us? How do we go? Well, how do you get a young quarterback to be able to, hey, throw that game plan that we just put on Wednesday and Thursday in? We have to adjust and adapt right now because they're giving us something completely different. You take that for granted a little bit when you have guys like Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold that have seen a lot, been through a lot, versus this is JJ McCarthy's first time through the ropes here of a starting quarterback. So if all of a sudden you're coming into a game on Sunday and you have one plan and you've got to try and adjust and adapt on the run, how well can McCarthy do that? That's just something we're going to have to figure out as time goes on.
Well, and as far as it pertains to Chicago, the opponent they will actually play a football game against soon, which is very exciting just in itself. Jalen Johnson's status is up in the air for this game, which makes a big difference just in itself, because they can't just have Jalen Johnson try to cover Justin Jefferson. Not that anybody ever does one-on-one exactly, but he has more capability to do it than most corners in the NFL. And if he's not there, then they do have to throw the house at Jefferson. But there's this delicate balance that I feel like every quarterback has struggled with Justin Jefferson. And of course, it's way better to have him than not, of how risky do you want to be? Because in this offense, you don't really have to be. And I think there's a lot still there with Adam Thielen. I think that Jalen Naylor can be effective down the field. We know that Hockenson is a monster underneath. You have Aaron Jones coming out of the backfield. They had good chemistry throwing the ball. There's so many other options, but also any quarterback who throws the ball to Justin Jefferson in his career has 111 quarterback rating. It's good to throw the ball to him. And without the benefit of a training camp together, I do think this is a feeling out process. And if I'm Kevin O'Connell, what I'd like to see them get is a couple easy buckets, a couple like 5-yard slant, little quick hitch, like get the ball from McCarthy to Jefferson to get them connected early in the game. And then you can work that out as it goes along.
Yeah. And we're very lucky that Jefferson is not your classic all-star receiver where he's going to come back and go, hey, I'm always open, right? Like, because that puts so much pressure on a young quarterback when, I mean, we've seen it where receivers come off and they slam their helmet because they're not getting the ball. And it's like, dude, you were double coverage. He's like, don't matter. I was still open, right? I've never met a receiver that was never open. Like no receiver ever like, oh yeah, I was covered on that play, right? They're always open. And so I think it's really good that we have the humble superstar in Justin Jefferson to help McCarthy go along where it's like, hey bud, look my way. Right. Like, but it's not this overbearing, like, get me the football. Right. And that's a big piece there because you're right. Without the chemistry there that they've had all of training camp, there is a bit of a feeling out process. But that can also work to Jefferson's way, where if Jefferson's not getting the ball early and it's Hawk and it's Naylor and it's the run game that's getting the ball, that's just going to open him up. Right. And all he needs is half a step and see a strike up the Gallahorn, right? And that's really where you're going to want to go. And I think, honestly, Matt, you're not going to see the slants and the hitches early for him because there's going to be such a focal point on him. It's going to be the deep shot. It's going to be the over the top when a safety bites on a play action, or he bites on Hawkinson, who's hooked up at 12 yards, and then there's that open shot and then let it eat. That's where I think you're going to see more of the success with Justin Jefferson early, because he's going to be such a focal point. Like on offense, when we play against like Micah Parsons or Aaron Donald, you walk into the meeting room on Wednesday and there's a star around that player, and you go, we're not letting him beat us. Well, if you look at this offense, you're going, okay, 18's the star. We're not letting him beat us. We'll worry about him, everyone else. That's where he's going to have to pick his times to get the ball to 18 and not try and force it into him.
Right. I think you want to go where everything takes you if you're JJ McCarthy, but that is something that's hard to figure out early on. I think even Sam Darnold probably needed a couple weeks to really get fully comfortable with that. And by the end of the season, he had played with everybody long enough. But I think walking into this spot where you haven't thrown to Thielen and you haven't thrown to Jefferson in training camp, you've thrown to Naylor, but that's not a guy you want the football to go out to enough. If you end up with 12 targets for TJ Hawkinson, kind of like last year's Bears game where they just entirely forgot to cover him, go toward who they forget to cover, and you'll work through the other things with Justin Jefferson. But for the first game, just make sure you're keeping the train on the tracks, and you'll have to make that decision of when is the right time to force the ball in. I mean, if you're in the high red zone and you're taking a shot to the back of the end zone for Jefferson, knowing he's probably going to break it up if it's not perfect, well, that's a great time to take a shot to him. If he's breaking in between two defenders, and there's a linebacker sinking into the zone and there's a safety coming down on it, well, maybe in week 15, you want to fit that in when you're comfortable with the timing, but he's never played at this speed outside of a joint practice and outside of practice against Brian Flores' defense. And I mean, I guess you could call the 8 snaps or whatever it was in the preseason, but that's definitely not it. So here's what I want to know from you. You were in Minnesota when Teddy Bridgewater in 2015 took his second season, and he had starting experience the year before. You were also in Buffalo with Josh Allen when he was a young quarterback. What is your advice from the offensive lineman's perspective for young McCarthy as he steps out on the field in Soldier Field, that's going to be quite an atmosphere out there, I think.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it didn't matter how bad Chicago was. Soldier Field's a hard place to win. Like, especially in a prime, like, first game of the year, everyone's undefeated, everyone's excited, new head coach, right? So much excitement in Chicago right now. You know, as a young offensive lineman or as a young quarterback, first of all, I'm telling the offensive line, do not let this dude get hit early. Right. That is priority number one. Is we cannot let McCarthy in the first 2 series take a big hit, because I've seen it too many times with young quarterbacks. They get hit early and they get hit often. Their processing speed, it just skyrockets, right? What they think is 2 seconds or that route's going to be there in their brain, it's 1.5. Now the ball's out early, or they're not ready for it and then the ball's out late. Like, it just completely rewires a quarterback's brain when they get hit early, regardless of their age, but more on the younger side of, man, you get that quarterback rattled early, not a good thing. And so for me, if I'm talking to McCarthy, it's kind of like what we've been talking about. Hey, don't be afraid to take what the defense gives you, right? Don't think you got to light this thing up in the first quarter. Like, games in the NFL are not won in the first quarter. They can be lost in the first quarter, but games in the NFL are rarely won in the first quarter. It's about managing this game and putting yourself in a position to win it in the fourth. Because so many of these games come down to 1-score games with 4 minutes left on the clock. You need to put yourself in position to go capitalize on that moment. And that means not throwing turnovers early, taking what the defense gives you, not taking a bad sack, knowing it's okay to throw the football away and live to fight another down because our defense is so good, right? A punt's not always a bad thing when you have a really solid defense like the Vikings have. So it's more about just, hey, you are okay not feeling the pressure of, I was the 9th overall pick. Right. Like, I was the guy they picked to come in here and save the franchise. You're in a very unique position where that is not the case for you right now. Like, you're here to 2 hands on the steering wheel, keep it between the white lines, and we'll allow to take the throttle brake off here as we keep going. That's more what I need to see out of McCarthy early in his first couple games here. And if he can do those things, that's when KOC can go, okay, taking the blinders off, full pedal down, but it just can't come out of the gate the wrong way and set him on a trajectory that's a scare thing we saw with Caleb Williams, we've seen with the young quarterbacks across the whole league. if they don't start the year strong, it's really hard to dig them out of that hole, because then the pressure comes on social media, the national talking heads are like, excuse me, it's just impossible to get away from. You just want him to have, yeah, that's a pretty solid first outing. Like, that would be my goal for him coming out of Chicago.
The Bears in particular, let's dive into the trenches here and give a little trench preview. The Bears defensive line to me is meh. And that really depends, though, on how good Grady Jarrett is right now. Now, if you look at his numbers over the last 2 years, that has not been the Grady Jarrett that was terrifying for centers and guards for the Minnesota Vikings every single time they faced off against him. This is much more of a middling type of player, but new system, new place. I don't know how that's going to work out. Montez Sweat has become a very good player for them. Did not have a great season last year, but still somebody that can mess up your game plan. I think if you're the Vikings offensive line, which at this moment completely healthy as far as I understand, we're going to see what happens with Christian Darrisaw when we get out there for their first practices and when they put out an injury report, and whether he's just 100% good to go or if there's some question. I mean, I think if you're the Vikings, you're probably like, questionable.
Limited reps. He missed one snap. So
right, exactly. Yeah, right. But I don't know as of this moment. Let's go on the assumption that Christian Darrisaw will be back for week 1. I think that this is an ideal defensive line to start against. I do want to highlight one Chicago Bear, though, that gave him a really hard time last year and is not a household name. Gervin Dexter Sr. Remember that name. This guy is actually quite good. He had 39 pressures last year. 5 of them came in the game against the Vikings. We just didn't care because Caleb Williams was getting sacked left and right. So it's like whatever the offense did is fine. But Gervin Dexter Sr. Is a former second-round draft pick who's got some talent in there. He's a guy to watch. But overall, there's not a Micah Parsons. There's not an Aiden Hutchinson here. There's a lot of decent or good. But for this offensive line, I think it should be a clear advantage Vikings.
I would agree. You know, the only reason I might push back tiny on that is it's the first week of the year.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's fully ready to go. No one is dinged, right? Like the guys like Grady Jarrett and, Sweat, they're a little older in the teeth, right? So when you catch them in week 8 or 9, way different than catching everyone in week 1, right? Everyone right now is going to feel the best they're going to feel all year long. So you're going to get everyone's best shot. Right. So I think that if we're having this conversation whenever they play again, I'm not sure when that is. Obviously, it's probably going to be if everything's same, and everyone's healthy, then really big advantage back towards the Vikings offensive line. It's probably more 60-40, in my opinion, right now, just based off of we have seen what Sweat and Grady Jarrett can do when they're in the prime of their playing career. We're going to get it for at least 2 quarters. Right. Those first 2 quarters, they're going to be primed up and ready to go. And if things start going their way, they're going to have more juice. But it's also one of those things where if things go badly, those dudes have been around long enough. They're like, oh, here we go again. Like they'll have that little bit of that taper down. But I'm just really excited to see how the rookie and the vet on the left side of the offensive line with Ryan Kelly and Donovan Jackson handle something like that. Right. Do they let Donovan out be like, hey, bud, that's Grady Jarrett. Good luck. Right. Or is it like, hey, we're going to help you along here. Will, we paid you a lot of money. You handle yourself over there. Right. We're going to really help this offensive line break in slowly on the left side here. Like between Kelly and Darrisaw, I mean, you've got 2 great bumpers next to you. But I am just really curious how they're going to handle the Donovan Jackson piece with this in pass protection and run blocking.
When you came into the league, now you're a strong gentleman overall, but how much stronger did you have to get before you could face those types of guys? Because what I've seen from Donovan Jackson is I think he's a fighter and I think he's a hang on for dear life guy. If somebody gets an edge on him, he doesn't just like, I'm out of the play, which I can name on 2 hands the number of guards I've seen do that over the number of years here from Tuesday morning left guard. But he's a guy where even if you watch that one preseason throw where McCarthy overthrew Lucky Jackson coming across, Jackson's in his lap a little bit, but he's not getting beat. He's just getting moved back. I think that's okay. You can survive that. Your quarterback can figure that out if he's got pocket presence. What you can't have is just getting steamrolled. You can't get run over. You can't lose quickly. I think he's got that in him, but how much stronger do rookies usually have to get before they can really anchor against the best of the best?
Yeah, I mean, it's very rarely you can do that in your rookie year. And a lot of that is because of the bull crap that is the pre-draft process, right? If you allowed these dudes to, hey, your senior season's over, train like you're going to go play in the NFL right now, they're in completely different body shapes than when it's like, hold on, we got to take 3 months here to go run the underwear Olympics and not be a football player, and then we'll get you ready to go. Like, so many of your strength gains when you're playing college football come in winter conditioning, right? Because you're not training for game, you're not training for season. It's just about eating food and lifting weight. And when you take that away and you're like, become a track star, slim up your body, right? Look good look good at that. It just changes the offensive line's complexion, where we have to work really hard to get all of our play strength back after we run a 40 for 4.12 seconds, whatever that bull crap. I hate it so much, Matt. Anyways, it really takes a long time because your body gets so beat down, right? You go right into senior season, right into training camp, right into bowl prep, right into combine, right into OTAs. Like, you just don't have a chance for your body to recover. So you kind of just are stuck with the strength that you're at. That being said, you can get stronger during season, but it's not super likely. You don't really see guys take that big jump strength-wise until their second year. Now, you can survive and you can be a dominant player based off technique and fundamentals and that piece there, but you're going to get got. I can think of our very first play against the Bengals in 2016. We're playing against Geno Atkins, and all week long we were like, Pat, F-line, rookie, listen to me. This dude is different. Like, he's a freak, right? You got to be ready to go when he slants in. First play of the game, he slants from a 3 technique, steamrolls Pat F-line, takes a sack, right? And it's just one of those things where you can prepare guys for that are young, but until they realize it in a game, it's totally different. And so I think there's going to be some moments like that for Donovan Jackson this year based off of the players that we play in our division. And every week you're playing against a guy that has a chance to be a Pro Bowler. That's just going to happen. But I agree with you. I've liked what I've seen in the small sample size from him so far.
The guard position just keeps getting harder and harder and harder because teams are making their defenses more complicated. They're sending rushes from everywhere. And we were talking about even with Parsons, this guy is not just going to line up off the left edge, and everybody is going to have to deal with Micah Parsons when the Vikings face the Packers eventually. A team like the Bears, they like to blitz their linebackers. Like, they have linebackers who have unique speed and size. So you might end up with, stunts and blitzes and things like that you have to pick up. And then there is, when you get steamrolled, not letting it get down on you. There's been a few offensive linemen over the years where when they lost a rep really badly, it was kind of over for the rest of the game. And that, I think people don't understand the mental toughness that it takes at that position to put that behind you, because you can feel like you're drowning real fast out there. And I think that is a benefit of Donovan Jackson, but you never really know until they actually get out there and start playing. So that's something we're going to be watching very close. It's also something that I can't tell you from seeing training camp practice. How does it feel the first time you get got at Soldier Field on national TV, Monday Night Football? But at least he's prepared from that, having been a national champion little bit from that standpoint.
Yeah, I would agree with that on that front there. The other piece of it is you don't really know what it feels like until you're picking your quarterback up off the turf for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you get beat in practice, and I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure he's gotten beat by Hargrave, or he's gotten beat by those Jonathan Allen, and like they run by and they do the sack as they run by the quarterback. And that's one thing when you're in the meeting room, like, hey, bud, we got to clean this up. It's another thing when you're watching McCarthy's helmet pushed over his face and you're helping him up, pulling the grass out of his face and going, I'm sorry, buddy. Like, that's a different feeling where you're like, okay, this is real now. Like, this is big time real boy football. Like, they're trying to hurt that dude. And that's the other piece where you have to understand, like, there are real life consequences in live games now. And you've been in practice mode for so long, getting out of that takes a second, but it won't take long.
Now let's flip it around to the other side. The Chicago Bears revamped their offensive line. Joe Thuney is still one of the better offensive linemen in the NFL. There was an issue with his salary cap hit and age for Kansas City to move on from him, but his numbers were terrific from last season. The rest of this, though, Jeremiah, you're going to have to tell me if you agree. I'm just not really buying that Chicago's offensive line is miraculously better. They had a left tackle competition, which does not sound great for them, going against Jonathan Grenard, who murdered everything in front of him during training camp. And Drew Dahlman is much more of a run blocker than a pass blocker. Jonah Jackson was let go by his own team. I think that this team has some shortcomings that the Vikings should be able to attack. And I also think that this is going to look way different. This is going to look like when you have you'd have to go back to like Sharif Floyd and Tom Johnson. You'd have to go back 10 years the last time. I mean, a little bit of Sheldon Richardson as well, but you have to go back a long time before you have two dudes on the interior who are penetrating defensive tackles.
Yeah, I'm going to push back. I think the Bears offensive line is actually a top 5, top 6 unit.
Wow, really? Okay.
I really do. I mean, Drew Dahlman was incredible in Atlanta, right? He was phenomenal, and he fits that scheme that Ben Johnson wants to run so well. If you think about what Frank Ragnow was able to do with the Lions, I mean, Joe Tooney's already wearing a gold jacket, right? Like he already has that on. And I agree. The Jonah Jackson one, he's been injured so much, but when he's in his prime, he's very well. Darnell Wright, yeah, first-round talent, put it together last year. I think they're going to showcase him a little bit more, but I really liked Ozzie Trupilo kid. If he's starting, I think he was one of my favorite tackles in this year's draft when I was watching. And so I do think that they're going to have a much better offensive line than people may even give them credit for based off with the experience with the young youth on the edges. But I still do give advantage Minnesota Vikings, right? Like, I don't think it's as big of an advantage as we would want it to be, but I agree with you. The two interior guys, and then also what that's going to do is free up Ivan Pace so much. It's going to fill Metellus so much. Like, there's just going to be so much more that the linebacker room can do because these two guys up front are going to command so much attention, right? Last year, I can remember there was multiple times that I think about the Eagles game, right? Landon Dickerson is climbing scot-free to go cover up Ivan Pace, and that's not going to be a good thing for anyone involved. Well, now if Landon Dickerson has to worry about Hargrave, has to worry about Jonathan Allen, and Pace can use that quickness to get over the top, advantage Vikings, right? So super excited to watch how these two defensive tackles contribute. I'm also really interested to see how Brian Flores uses them. Is this, hey, we want them good for 35 snaps a game, or is this a, hey, we need you for 60 snaps a game and then we'll take you off? Because you just don't want those guys being older veterans taking 60 to 65 snaps a game if they don't have to.
I just think I have probably more questions about inexperience at left tackle against the Vikings' nastiest rusher. And then we'll see about, Drew Dahlman. I think that Dahlman is, at least by his data, a tremendous run blocker and maybe more along the average lines of pass protection, which if you're facing Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen could play into it, especially if you have a quarterback who holds onto the ball for 7 seconds, which will ultimately determine whether the offensive line looks great or terrible. I think
so true.
Very much with that. Now with Allen and Hargrave, and as you mentioned, how are they going to use the depth here? Because Jalen Redmond is behind them. Redmond had an incredible camp to allow them to trade away Harrison Phillips. But is there concern about you're facing a coach who has had a prolific run game in recent years? DeAndre Swift is not a household name, but has had some big games against the Vikings in the past. How do you feel like they will manage that of penetrating defensive tackles, very different than gap stuffers than they've had before in the past? And also, I haven't talked to you about the Harrison Phillips trade, like how you felt about that.
That was super. I'll start with the Phillips thing. Super interesting to me. I mean, that was one that I did not anticipate seeing. I don't know if it was a cap issue related. I don't know if it was just a depth issue in the room related, or, hey, we want to keep all these guys, but we can't. So let's get value for one of the guys that we can get rid of. Right, because obviously value for Harrison Phillips could be higher than for a guy like Redmond. So I don't know all the pieces that went into that, but he is such a good run defender that I feel like that's going to be a very interesting thing to keep an eye on if we start getting the ball ran on us a little bit. Right, hey, do we miss Big Harry, horrible Harry in the middle there? That being said, I am slightly concerned, Matt, about how Brian Flores comes against this Ben Johnson team, because historically speaking, Ben Johnson has known how to beat up on a Brian Flores defense. Now, Caleb Williams is not Jared Goff, right? He doesn't understand when this guy plugs, you throw right behind it, right? At least I don't think he does yet. He could prove me wrong. But I've always felt that he's done a great job of knowing how to hurt Brian Flores with his aggression. And so my hope is with these new additions that we have up front, Brian Flores can taper the aggression a little bit and rely on his front four to go create the pressure that he needs to go create, because that's where the Lions hurt us last year, right? We blitz Ivan Pace, we send a safety off the edge, and there's Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's Sam Laporta, right? They have answers to our problems that we're creating. It's a lot harder to have answers to those when we're only rushing 4 and we're getting home and we're still creating. So I do think with the penetration and that disruption that we're trying to create up front, it allows for us to sit back a little bit more and wait for, hey, what does Ben Johnson do with this new group and how can we attack it instead of being the aggressor and allowing the Bears then to have an answer to our problems.
So much of it just comes down to whether Caleb Williams can do what he's supposed to do, right?
100%.
I mean, what Jared Goff is so good at is he drops back and he looks at a zone, right? Let's even say they're playing split field coverage, different coverage on this side.
Dirty.
That, oh yeah, maybe
come on, Matt, talk dirty, baby.
Oh, maybe a little palms coverage on one side and cover 2 on the other side. Oh yeah, ooh, football. But Jared Goff, I think, can look at that. His brain diagnoses it quickly. He understands the play. He understands the read. He hits the foot. The ball comes out. I did not just describe to you Caleb Williams in any way, shape, or form from what we saw last year. But the thing is that I tend to think that guys who can't see the field can't see the field. I don't think that they invent now I do. Now I identify those coverages. Now my brain works that fast. But I want to leave the door open here for the system last year being bad for him and the teaching being bad because that whole coaching staff seemed like it was just a mess and the organization was a mess. And this offense having some answers against Brian Flores. I think the key here is how much they could create for pressure up front, because if they can't, and then they feel like, oh, I got to send Pace, I got to send Cashman, I got to, bring in Dallas Turner with Andrew Van Ginkel, send more rushers, 5 or 6. I think even Caleb Williams can find these holes, but if they can rush with 4 or 5 all night long, I don't think that he's going to have too many answers for this Vikings defense.
The only reason I think he might have answers is his receiving core is
it's good.
Awesome.
It's good.
Like it's very, very good. And so much kind of what we talked about, how, yes, the identity is going to run through McCarthy to get to Justin Jefferson. Very similar. The identity has to run through Caleb Williams to get the ball to Rome Odunze, to get the ball to DJ Moore. And then I think it's Zacchaeus, right, who came over from Washington, who had a really nice first preseason game. And Swift has caught a lot of balls out of the backfield. So, and Cole Kmet's still there. It's just, you look across the board and you're going, okay, Ben Johnson's got equally, if not slightly better toys on the outside to play with here in Chicago. If he can even get Caleb Williams to take 5 steps forward from what he was last year, this could be a very dangerous passing game, right? I do think they're going to rely heavily on the run. That's in their DNA. But if he can get the passing game going with Caleb and in rhythm and have answers for him, like you said, built-in answers to the test within the play, I worry about this wide receiver core for the Bears kind of having guys running wide open if they can hold up in protection.
I think they have almost everything that Caleb Williams needs to be a star quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just comes down to, can he do it, and can he deal with it if Javon Hargrave squishes him a few times? Because
remember the whole picking the grass out of the helmet thing? Like, that's going to happen again this year.
Oh, no question about it. And we've also seen the other side of that, where Caleb Williams dances around and makes unbelievable, breathtaking plays and wears down your defense to the point where in the fourth quarter, everybody is just completely exhausted from chasing this guy. So I don't doubt the ceiling with Caleb Williams. I just need him to show me he can find those receivers, because I saw Keenan Allen getting open last year. I saw DJ Moore just kind of walk off the field one time it seemed like he said he was injured, but I don't know. Usually injured players don't wander off the field. Oh, I'm hurt. I'm just you guys carry on. Carry on. That doesn't.
It's 3rd and 8, DJ. I know it. Back's a little tight.
I'm good. I'm just he's going to be running around for at least 11 more seconds. I just need to get to the sideline. You don't see that very often. And that makes me wonder about whether he can find these guys as consistently as they're going to need him to. So here's, we got the new sponsorship, FanDuel, by the way. And so here's the Caleb Williams question. Caleb Williams this year on FanDuel, his over-under for passing yards is 3,625. Do you think that he gets close to 4,000 yards there? Wow. 3,625 for Caleb Williams.
The only reason I say yes is because I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. I think that they're going to be having to throw the rock in the second half to catch back up. And you're going to play against defenses where if you're up by a couple scores, they're just going to keep everything in front of them, right? So it's going to be 10 yards here, 15 yards here, and then the occasional deep shot to Rome Odunze and whatnot. So I'm going to take the over. I think because of them not being double-digit win football team, they're going to be playing from behind a lot, having to throw the rock and not be able to do what the Lions did last year, which is control the clock and run the football.
Okay, so here's a question then. How many games do you think these two teams win?
I think I did this exercise on a O-line committee, and I think I had the Bears at like 5 or 6 wins. Like, it's one of those things where I'm with you, until Caleb proves to me that he is not who we think he is, I can't give him the benefit for the doubt. He's not a CJ Stroud where he had a great rookie campaign, took a step back, and you're somewhere and you're like, hey, that rookie guy's still in there. We're still waiting to know, is the Caleb Williams that we think we want to be in there actually in there, or is this a Christian Ponder situation all over again? Like, what is it? And so until he proves to me that Ben Johnson can get what he needs out of him, probably 5 or 6 wins for this Bears team, with the upside being 8, right? If they can put it all together, like probably an 8-win football team.
Yeah, I mean, on FanDuel, they're plus 105 to be under 7.5 wins. And I think when you look at the rest of the NFC North, that is perfectly reasonable. Are we both picking the Vikings for this game, by the way? The Vikings are favored on FanDuel and probably everywhere else. I would pick them for this game.
I would too. I would pick them strictly out of the first-year head coach thing for Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams still trying to figure it out, versus going off of a huge year for Kevin O'Connell. Only real change in the whole guard there was the quarterback on offense. You revamp the O-line. Like, I think if you went position by position, you would nod a lot of them towards the Vikings. And overall, I think just as a culture, the Vikings have a better team right now.
I think so too. I think the Vikings are a year ahead of where Chicago is. And whether they end up having it work out or not will depend on their quarterback. But I think roster-wise, they don't have enough on defense yet to make a real argument to run with the Bulls here with the other teams. Okay, before we get to the 5th season of Love to See It, Hate to See It, Anthony Barr announced his retirement. We had a press conference with him where he revealed that he used to puke before every game, which is, I didn't need to know that. I did not need to know that. And also, I think you guys are crazy. Just insane things that maybe should stay behind closed doors. But what was your takeaway from playing with Anthony Barr for those years?
Yeah, I had the unique chance I actually got to play against him in college at UCLA. And then to play with him at Minnesota was super fun, because he could do 2 jobs unbelievably. He could rush the passer and he could play the linebacker position, and that range and the speed that he had was just so fun to watch. And it was super hard to practice against, because you never really knew, hey, is he coming or is he dropping? I got to climb on him on the screen or whatever. And then with that double mug linebacker system that Kendricks and Barr had, with that Mike Zimmer era where they had such synergy of playing chess when the other team's playing checkers, and how do we switch, and making sure, hey, Barr's going to be on the running back. Well, that's a win. And that piece there, he was just such a heady up football player, and also just a great dude, fantastic teammate to be around, always did his job, was never a distraction in that realm there. I have nothing but glowing remarks for Anthony Barr.
Anthony is such an interesting test case, because every player that you talk with, every coach that you talk with is like, Anthony Barr was awesome. He was a nightmare to play against. His size-speed combination. There was a play in the Minneapolis Miracle game where it was maybe a screen to Alvin Kamara, and that's his rookie year. He's got crazy jolt, and Barr just runs him down, like sideline to sideline, just runs him down and makes a stop there. And you're like, that is crazy for a linebacker of that size to move that well. And the leadership on the defensive side, the play calling, the blitzing, the cat and mouse game. And I also think on the outside, fans always thought he should have been more. And I mean, for me, a 4-time Pro Bowler is a pretty darn good career. But I think he was a little bit of like, the people who know on him. And that's why Zimmer would always be super defensive about Anthony Barr. But if you're on the outside, you're like, well, how many sacks? How many strip sacks? But I don't think that his value to those teams was exactly something you can quantify in a stat sheet.
I completely agree, right? Because he was a Swiss Army knife, right? He wasn't just a pass rusher, and he wasn't just a linebacker. I mean, he was an eraser, right? He was, hey, we have this issue that we're going to be dealing with this week. Anthony, that's your assignment. And it might not show up on the stat sheet because he took that job away from whatever we told him he needed to take away. So they didn't throw the ball to that guy, or they didn't throw him to the tight end, or, hey, we need you to rush the pass this week. And it's like, oh, there's the 6 tackles because that's what we asked of him to do that week. That's the privilege you get to have when you are one of those players, right? I think back to the Isaiah Simmons pick from Clemson, right? That's who they wanted. That's who they envisioned him to be, was like that Anthony Barr, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't do the jack of all trades thing. And that was what made Anthony so special, was his ability to adapt and do whatever was needed week in and week out, whether it was brushing the passer, getting the sacks, whether it was forcing the fumble or stuffing the run or blitzing the A-gap. He was just the Swiss Army knife that could do everything so well. That's why he was a Pro Bowl player, not because he could just rush the passer or just do one thing.
All right, love to see it, hate to see it. I'm going to start off with, I hate to see that I have to watch Dallas like right off the bat. Do I have to? I'm going to get a flood of Dallas. Every national TV game is going to be all up in my grill. And if they win 6 games and they're mediocre and I'm watching, I don't even know who their backup is. It used to be Cooper Rush. I'm just not going to be too thrilled. And look, it's, Philadelphia should be on TV. They won the Super Bowl. But did it have to be Dallas? Did it really have to be Dallas to start my football watching experience? So I love to see football is back. I hate to see that I have to begin with Dallas and Philly.
What's the FanDuel over under for the amount of times Micah Parsons is talked about on the broadcast?
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be nonstop, right? As Philly hits a deep shot to AJ Brown, I can already hear it now. Well, they're really missing Micah Parsons, able to go and make that
Yes.
make that disruption there for Jalen Hurts, right? And that whole piece there. So I agree with you. It's one of those things where Jerry's playing chess when we're all playing checkers, apparently, where he's just trying to worry about getting that 15 million up to 16 billion or whatever his team's valued at. But yeah, I mean, this Dallas team, every year we talk about it, they're super overrated. Like this Dallas team, everyone thinks, oh, we went out and got George Pickens and we have CD Lamb, and you're going to be the exact same you were last year. And I think that Philly might steamroll them. Like it might be a bloodbath to start the year. And if that's the case, good luck, Jerry, because it's not going to be a fun time down in Dallas.
I believe Philly is a 7.5 point favorite too, which is pretty big to start.
Big,
I mean, usually you don't want to see
home
that.
Opener,
right? If you're the NFL, that's not what you wanted to see. Was a game, because you're looking for Super Bowl champ type matchups and the close games, and that's not really a good sign. But just an overall general hate to see it is Dallas finding their way into the football conversation right up into the last minute. And I saw a friend of mine, Ian Hartitz, tweet today, like, I think I've got enough Micah Parsons analysis. I think I'm good. Now maybe we could talk about the rest of the games. And so that is my first hate to see it of the year.
That's fair. My first hate to see it of the year is my man, Bill Belichick.
Hate to see it.
What are we doing? Why are you doing
Too bad.
This? Why did you think this was a good idea? Like, did your ego...
Wait, are you talking about taking the job or the girlfriend?
Taking the job and the girlfriend, and the whole thing. The whole thing is just like, what happened? Did you lose it? Did a couple screws come loose where you felt like, hey, I can go to North Carolina in this era of college football and be just fine? I mean, watching him get dog walked on Monday Night Football, not what you want to see for a 6-time in the argument of the greatest head coach in the NFL. Every single loss that they have like that, Andy Reid creeps closer and closer and closer of being called the GOAT as Bill Belichick's legacy continues to get more and more damaged. I just don't think this was a good idea, and I don't like seeing it. Like, love or hate the guy, I don't like seeing a Hall of Fame coach like that just get dragged up and down the field.
Oh, so you weren't being sarcastic. See, I
don't like it. I don't like it.
Okay. I thought this was a sarcastic hate to see it.
No,
like, oh, what a shame. This
don't like it.
Psychotic egomaniac who deflates footballs or whatever and spies on the other team. What a shame to have it further proved that Tom Brady was the reason that you won all your championships. That's too bad. I mean, look, this happens to a lot of coaches where they think they were the reason. And I promise you're not. I mean, there's great schematic coaches. There's coaches that get the most out of guys. And look, Kevin O'Connell, look what he did with Sam Darnold. Also, look what he did with Nick Mullins, where they just lost every game. Like, every one of you that's a genius, I'm proud of you. And there are great coaches that are way better than others. I think the Vikings get a huge edge every Sunday they walk into with O'Connell and Flores. Most Sundays, not against Sean McVay, but most Sundays they walk into, they have an edge, right? But if Tom Brady is your quarterback, that's why you won all the championships. He goes to another team. He throws for 5,000 yards. He wins another Super Bowl. It was him, Bill. You can't. And also the college environment, way different. I thought this was a great point. Somebody brought up was that in the NFL, the edges are so small. Like even bad teams can beat good teams on a week to week basis.
Any given Sunday.
Exactly. It is not any given Saturday. If your team has less talent than the other team, you get crushed 99% of the time in college football. And it was just clear, like that team wasn't very talented. They couldn't stop a thing. Doesn't matter what you draw up. If he's in there going like, oh, I've got the best matchups, or it doesn't matter if you do. Because your guy can't stop their guy. Their guy will just crush you and run over you and run for a touchdown, which is what happened. I am not sad to see it. I think Belichick has been one of the most arrogant, egotistical, intolerable people in sports for a really long time. And I respect the F out of Tom Brady. And that's how I felt about Belichick for the whole time, the whole Patriots legacy outside of the very beginning. So congrats to Tom Brady. You look even better today.
Yeah, 100%. Tom woke up with a little glimmer in his eye going, oh, Billy, it's going to be a long year in Chapel Hill.
That is absolutely right. My true love to see it. Well, shout out to the Gophers and looking like their quarterback played pretty well. Love to see it. A great weekend of college football. I love to see several of the week one matchups that just cannot wait to watch. And that starts with Buffalo and Baltimore. Thank you, schedule makers. Sunday Night Football. Let's go. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, two teams competing for a Super Bowl. I think I'm going to try it. This is the year that one of them makes the Super Bowl and not Kansas City. Gonna dip my toe in that water. But that's as good as it gets, man. Like there's about 5 matchups in this first week, even like Texans, Rams. Like, there's just a lot of good football for week one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NFL is getting smarter and smarter and knowing, hey, we got to come out of the gate hot with our ratings. But I also I'm hopeful, and my love to see it this year is I'm really hopeful that the gap closed from last year of the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because last year was like, it was either 14 wins or like 6. Like the midfield of the 10, 11, 8, 9 type of season last year just didn't really exist. And so my hope is with the offseason moves that were made this year, it seems like a lot more teams got a lot more competitive. I just hope that there's just better football throughout the entirety of this year and that you're seeing a lot more close games and not having the 5 teams with 14 wins. And it's going to be, hey, a team with 9 wins might make it into the wild card this year because there's so much up and down and disparity across the league. Looking at it from an outside in, I think that's the case because I do think a lot of those teams went out and got new coaches. They got better players, that piece there. Now you're always going to have the teams that win 3 or 4, whatever it might be. I just hope it's not as big as it was last year.
All right. My last love to see it is that there is an internet out there that tries to talk things into existence, right? That tries to talk Shedeur Sanders into being a franchise quarterback. That tries to talk Bill Belichick into the greatest college coach also. That tries to talk Arch Manning into being the best prospect to ever play college football. But you know what's so good about football, Jeremiah, is that's why they play the games. So we can find out. And there's just some like small justice in this world to all these people trying to make Shedeur a victim, and I don't mean to make it about him. This is more about you can't tweet something into happening in the NFL.
No.
You either earn it or you don't. It either happens or it doesn't. You can't make it happen in college football either. You can't just have enough TV segments on Arch Manning to make him a great quarterback from day one. And I like that about football. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that pigskin, we're going to kick it off, and we're going to bounce it around to the kickoff return, and we're going to play these freaking games. That's what I love to see.
100%. No more talking, no more bull crap. It is all about playing, right? And if you play and you do things the right way, then it's going to happen. If you don't, you're going to get exposed. And guess what? There's going to be a lot more mean tweets coming your way.
That is for sure. Tuesday morning, left guard. Send your mean tweets to J Sirles 71 anytime you disagree with something on the show. But no, I'm so happy to be back with you every week going forward here. And covering every inch of this wonderful NFL season 2025. It's great, man. Great to have you back. Thanks for your time. We'll talk soon.
Football.
Jeremiah Sirles, my friends, football is back, and so is Tuesday Morning Left Guard. So every Tuesday, former Viking will be on here, and it's been a great ride with him covering all of these years leading up to this season, which I think is the most anticipated year that we have ever had in Purple Insider and Tuesday Morning Left Guard history. So questions, comments, thoughts, reactions to everything that Jeremiah said there. Maggie Robinson coming up a little bit later, and want to get you the FanDuel question of the day, which is the over-under for Vikings and Bears this week is 44.5 on FanDuel. Would you rather have that be a grind fest and hit the under for the Vikings, or would you rather have it be a shootout for the better chance for the Vikings to win? Over or under 44.5 points. If I told you that those results carried a win and a loss, over and under, which would you think was the better one for the win? Would you rather see grindfest or shootout with the over-under 44.5? That is your FanDuel question of the day. Also want to remind you of our sponsor, ZipRecruiter. I know a lot of you either own your own businesses or make decisions in management where you have to hire people, and you know what? It can be very difficult. It can be quite a headache. In fact, you have to sort through lots of resumes. People aren't qualified or just throwing in their resume for whatever, and sometimes you end up overlooking the best candidates, but that is not the case with ZipRecruiter, where they are there for all of your hiring needs. And right now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio. It is so easy. All you have to do, get on ZipRecruiter, ziprecruiter.com/audio. You can use their smart technology, which helps you find great candidates very quickly, or you can use that invite to apply button that allows you to reach out to your favorite candidates. Lots of ways that ZipRecruiter can work for you. So ditch the other hiring sites. Let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for. That needle in a haystack, great employee. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Again, try for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. So reactions, thoughts, feelings on what Jeremiah Sirles had to say. Specifically, you go back earlier in the interview, we had the conversation about the identity, and we were talking a bit about that last night of, will O'Connell push the gas pedal down? Will he have a good feeling for, is it time to lean into McCarthy in the passing game? Is it time to dial it back and play it a little more safe? Last year, I didn't think that he had the greatest foot what do you want to call it? Foot on the pedal or finger on the pulse. How about finger on the pulse sometimes of the game, where there were situations where they kept throwing and throwing, where the running game was working, or whether they're up in a game, or you get into the red zone and Darnold keeps throwing interceptions, but you keep dialing up plays that are having Darnold throw toward the end zone. Or, there were a number of examples throughout the season, and I thought it got better as the year went on. The end of the Falcons game was really good from the perspective of just pounding their face in and finishing off that game. But there were times where it felt a little bit rocky. So will that be something that they do better now that they have a more dynamic group of offensive players, especially in the backfield, especially in the interior line? But I even think the addition of Adam Thielen, if he stays healthy all year, could be really big for this team of having another underneath weapon. It's funny because when they signed Rondale Moore, I remember talking about this in the way that, hey, this is a different type of weapon. And then when I talked to Keenan McCardle this offseason before Rondale Moore got hurt, he said that they had the intent when signing Moore of getting someone who could be an underneath wide receiver. Now, they were thinking explosiveness, yards after catch, maybe throw a 2-yard pass and it turns into 20. That's not Adam Thielen, but that's still the general concept and idea remains that they needed somebody that offered something a little bit different than Jefferson or Addison or Jalen Naylor, maybe more similar to a tight end, but you can't just ask a tight end to be a wide receiver. It's not the same job. So Adam Thielen, I think, brings that different dynamic where if you are leaning into McCarthy at times, he doesn't necessarily have to be super aggressive in order to still be getting a lot of passes and still have that pass to run ratio be 60-40. But you'd also like them, when they do get ahead in a game, to remember who's in the backfield, remember how much money they spent on that offensive line, and also be able to read the situation and adapt. So say the Bears are taking away your run game, go to the short passing game. Say they're taking away the deep game, run the football. Like, force teams to bring up a safety so you can get better matchups with your outside wide receivers. They have the players to be able to do all this, and I think they have the coach to be able to take advantage of it, as we've seen in the past. It's just, can he fully maximize all of that, especially with some longer drives for JJ McCarthy? Because when I was watching him in training camp, one of my biggest takeaways was, I think JJ McCarthy came up in a world where a 10-play drive, a 12-play drive is really good. Stay on the field. Keep your team humming offensively. You don't have to hit a bunch of deep shots down the field in order for your offense to be a success. That's just how he was taught to play football by Jim Harbaugh. And I think he can carry a lot of that mentality over, where if he's only throwing 10% of his passes over 20 yards, which was kind of a little bit more than Kirk, but right in that Kirk range, that's okay. With this offense and the way that it's set up, that is a good place to be for JJ McCarthy. So that's one of the biggest questions, I think, of the year. And Jeremiah with a really interesting answer. If you missed that, you can go back and give it a listen. So what is on your guys' mind? So what are you thinking? We're heading into only a few days away now, less than a week. But also the Vikings are going to start practice. That means we'll hear from McCarthy. We'll hear from O'Connell. We'll hear from Aaron Jones tomorrow. Then Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson on Thursday, and the head coach on Saturday. So what do you want to know from those folks as we get into this? And I also wanted to look at the Vikings depth chart. Let me see if my screen share is working. Let's see if we can get this up there. Vikings depth chart. There we go. So this is the unofficial Vikings depth chart. It is extremely unofficial and should be noted as such that it is unofficial. However, it looks pretty darn accurate to me. And if it was official, I'd be okay with it. So clearly, as starting quarterback, JJ McCarthy, Carson Wentz the backup, Max Brosmer QB3, Aaron Jones your starting running back with Jordan Mason RB2. Right off the bat, week 1, I am extremely interested to see how the carries are divvied up between Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Ty Chandler is RB3, Xavier Scott RB4. I think that's fair based on their experience. As far as the wide receivers go, Jefferson and Addison, the starting outside receivers, and I would assume Adam Thielen pops into Jordan Addison's role. And behind them, Ty Felton and Miles Price are the other receivers to fill out the depth chart. Hawkinson and Oliver, Ben Urasek, your tight end 3. Your starting offensive line is exactly what you would think it is. Backup left guard is listed as Joe Huber, but I think that if Donovan Jackson were to get hurt, it would probably still be Blake Brandel, who plays both sides. Michael Juergens, your backup center. No surprises there. The backup right tackle is listed as Walter Rouse, though I still think Justin School would be the first guy off the bench there. On the defensive side, Grenard, Allen, Redmond, Hargrave, and Van Ginkel. Your front, Jalen Redmond being listed as the starter in the base package makes a ton of sense because he had a great camp. He's the reason I think they were able to get rid of Harrison Phillips, and Hargrave and Allen clearly the starters there. Levi Drake, Elijah Williams, and Ty Ingram Dawkins, the backups. I think Levi Drake would be the first guy off the bench there. And as far as the outside linebackers, you have Bo Richter, Dallas Turner as the backup outside linebackers to Van Ginkel and Grenard. And then, Tyler Batty is on IR, but Chaz Chambliss is another guy at outside linebacker there. How much Dallas Turner plays is of very much intrigue going into week 1. Starting linebackers, no surprise, Cashman and Ivan Pace, with Eric Wilson and Kobe King and Austin Keys behind them. And then at corner, Byron Murphy and Isaiah Rodgers, with Dwight McGlothern and Jeff Okudah listed as the backups there. I would assume that they're going to elevate Fabian Morrow for this game off the practice squad. And then Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, the starting safeties. We will see what we can find out about Harrison Smith and his health tomorrow. But Theo Jackson clearly going to play a lot. If Smith does not play in week 1, then does Jay Ward go in? Does Metellus play traditional safety? So there are some questions there. And as far as the official kick and punt returners, Miles Price listed as the kick and punt returner, not Ty Felton, who is listed as the third string kick returner. So Miles Price and Ty Chandler, and the backup punt returner is listed as Adam Thielen, which if Adam Thielen returns a punt, my friends, I'll give y'all $50. Like there is no way that Adam Thielen is returning any punts this season. And I don't think he's really the backup punt returner, but that will tell you exactly where they are, I guess, when it comes to the punt returning situation. Miles Price, man, it's your show. What a preseason for Miles Price. And, you know, the preseason generally doesn't matter for a lot of different things, but it certainly matters for a battle like that, where Price went from a guy who was not really talked about at all by us until all of a sudden you get to those preseason games and bang, he is on the scene with an 81-yard kick return. He had multiple 20-yard punt returns. One was called back, but he had a good return in that last game. And then there you are. I mean, talk about like small sample sizes, right? He just had, how many returns did he have? 5 in the entire preseason? And guess what, buddy? Soldier Field, you're number 1 on the depth chart. They really must see something in Miles Price. So looking at your guys' score predictions, Brian's thinking the over there. Tom wants 45-3 for the Vikings, of course, going over there. Jay DZ says the under, because I'd be upset that Flores defense got shredded. That's definitely true, that if they won a game 31-28, we'd be talking a lot about Flores defense, or 38-34 or something like that. It would be a big surprise if that were the case. Seldom Seen says, glad you asked about Donovan Jackson's anchor. Yep, that's something I'll be watching for, because it's one of the toughest things. I think the mental part is the hardest, but the next hardest is the strength. And can you anchor against these monster beasts who play in the NFL? We're talking about, Grady Jarrett, you know, he's older, he's not as good. I mean, it's still Grady Jarrett. That guy is an all-pro talent, not quite Hall of Fame, but I mean, one of the best players of the last decade. So good luck. Yeah, you got to play against him. And then, that interior of the Bears D-line, if he's good, is still could be a problem against the Vikings. And Seldom Seen asks, what's your gut on Van Ginkel and Harry? Well, let me get the injury report tomorrow. Is a lot easier for me to say at that point. I mean, I would assume we didn't hear anything about Van Ginkel's injury being serious, but it's better to wait until tomorrow. We get that first injury report. Then we can look at it and say, okay, well, if Harrison Smith doesn't practice at all, then the odds are not good. Or if Van Ginkel doesn't practice at all, then the odds are not good, because they've had some time to rest and recover here from training camp. But as of right now, I would just be taking a wild guess at where those guys are physically. And we'll get an update from O'Connell on Harrison Smith and his health situation and so forth. Son of Beaver says, how many Cowboy games get flexed out of prime time if they get crushed in week 1? I hope all of them get flexed. Hey, look, it's the NFL. We've been surprised before. Maybe Kenny Clark gets 10 sacks and Dak Prescott wins MVP, and we're all going, what dopes we were at the beginning of the season. The biggest surprise I think I've ever had was when the Vikings won. Well, the biggest surprise was the 2017 Vikings, but the biggest non-Vikings surprise was when 2021 Vikings play against the Bengals and they lose that game. And we just torched them after the game. How could you lose to the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals? This team stinks. They're young. They're not that good. Maybe 3 years from now. And then they went to the Super Bowl. So you never really do know. And I can't count out anybody, but the Dallas Cowboys, just so many national TV games. I get it. They've got an enormous fan base, but do we have to talk? Look, they trade Micah Parsons. Yes, you have to talk about that every day for a week. Of course you do. Do we have to do this every year with Dallas, where it's endless national TV games, endless contrived conversation on TV? We don't have to do that. Oops says 21-17. I think that's a fair assessment there, that having it be like a kind of in the middle, not a shootout, but definitely not a total grind fest. James has got 27-20, Son of Beavers 30-27 in OT because it's Chicago. Jay Deasy says, don't think O'Connell will be able to help himself. He is who he is. Pass, pass, pass. I mean, I don't blame you for thinking that, and I don't disagree. And we'll see. When they said that they wanted to build a team that could win a lot of different kind of fights, well, we'll see if they actually want to fight a lot of different kinds of ways. Are they a boxer that just relies on the haymaker, or can they work the body? Can they outgrind teams? That is what we are going to see, because there's not going to be all that many games where it's Jacksonville and you can just play badly and still get away with a win, where they had quite a few of those last year. Sam says in Jaden Daniels' first game in 24, he only had 3 passes that went longer than 10 yards. I mean, everybody's different. That offense there, well, I think that they didn't really know what they had in Jaden Daniels as a passer early on. And that offense started out built to throw a lot of screen passes, get the ball out of his hands, and then have him do some special things. And I think Cliff Kingsbury only realized after a little while that, this guy can actually really throw some dots. And the other part of it too is that, JJ McCarthy is not a rookie. It's his first time playing in the NFL, but he's not a rookie. And I've heard it all off season. He's basically a rookie. And every time I push back, not really, because a rookie would have shown up here in May, whereas McCarthy started here in off-season workouts and was leading this team all the way through. He knows the offense. He has developed as a passer to throw the football down the field. So I don't think they have to have total kid gloves. Bitter Bruce says, don't have nearly as many worries about McCarthy having rookie struggles. The kid's stats under pressure situations have been outstanding. Well, the thing about it is, I don't disagree with the concept of McCarthy being able to work through rookie struggles better than actual rookies would. But whatever stats you had at Michigan, it's awesome. They just don't mean anything. It was so long ago that we don't know anything about JJ McCarthy other than what we've seen at training camp, which was good. And under pressure situations, I think he was often at his best in the last 2 training camps. But now that we're going to have real games, then we will find out what it really is, as opposed to what we've had to kind of invent and imagine for a really long time about JJ McCarthy. I mean, the college stats, they're so long ago. He's just a kid at that point, and he still is a kid, but a much more developed kid than he was coming out of Michigan. Tom says, I don't think KOC has the patience to run 15-play drives. I think that it's not his philosophy. So I don't know if maybe it is impatience, but I think it's also his philosophy in general to just be aggressive. And he's talked about this, I think, it drove everybody insane when Ed Donatel was the defensive coordinator. But what he wanted in Brian Flores as a DC was somebody who was going to have the defensive version of what he does on offense. He's always going to want to be aggressive, but can you rein that in at times and trust the guys that you have in the backfield that if your first run goes 2 yards, well, maybe you can run it again. Maybe you can continue to pound away and have 3 straight runs and get a first down. I mean, you need 3.3 yards per carry to get a first down on 3 straight runs. You got 2 great running backs. You got interior offensive linemen that can run block. If you got a lead and you want to hold on to that lead in the second half, I think that's a good way to do it if you have the running game. And that's where I go back to, yes, it's his philosophy to hit explosive plays. Yes, it's his philosophy to go downfield. I agree with those philosophies. Analytically, they work. But who was it on this team in the backfield that over the last few years was capable of, smacking the opponent in the face? Like, how many guys did they have in Alexander Madison and Ty Chandler and late Delvin Cook, who basically never played again after that? I mean, he was extremely ineffective after that and then out of the league, which, kind of tells you a lot about where Delvin Cook was at in his career at the end in 2022. And then last year, Aaron Jones is really good early in the season. And then He gets a little banged up. The offensive line has to make a substitution to take out a better run blocker, to put in a better pass protector because they were just getting too many hits on Sam Darnold, and then that hurts their running game. Cam Robinson was atrocious at run blocking. That hurts their running game. So there's a lot that's going to be different here for JJ McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell than there was last year. James says 175 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. It'll be a great game. I agree with that. I mean, I don't need him to throw for 350. I don't need him to score 50 points. I mean, if you keep the train on the tracks and win the game, that's all that really matters. And then that other stuff can come as you go along. That's how I felt last year in New York with Sam Darnold. He kept the train on the tracks. He didn't make any big mistakes. He made a few plays when they needed him to. They won on defense, and then on to the next week. You can't play like that if you get in the playoffs. You can't play like that through an entire season and win 12 games. But you certainly could start it out that way with a win in Chicago, and it's also Chicago. Bill says, call me crazy, but I see McCarthy with 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, and the Vikings will blow out Chicago. Well, if they don't have Jalen Johnson, I don't know how good they are at pressuring the quarterback in general. I mean, blowout, if you look at what Vegas thinks of this game, what FanDuel thinks of this game, they're not seeing a blowout at all. Now, that doesn't mean that they're right or they know, but they think it's going to be close. It's only a 1.5 favorite for the Vikings, which I think is kind of interesting because I would have that at more, but nobody really knows what to expect from the coach of Chicago, the quarterback of Chicago, the quarterback of the Vikings. Very, very intriguing game. But, I mean, any sort of outcome that happens against Chicago is very plausible. It does, Skull to the Bowl says Naylor's likely back to week 1. That is a factor, though, like his health. That's another thing we're going to be looking for tomorrow is, does he practice in full? Or, when they say optimistic, that doesn't mean 100%. Seldom Seen says Bo Nix in his first 2 games had 2 picks in each. Temper expectations. Expect JJ to be super hyped and make some mistakes. I do too, but I also think that when we're making these comparisons to rookie quarterbacks, he's just not. He's just not a rookie. It's not the first time he's ever stepping on a field with another team. You had the joint practices and he had the preseason games, which I know rookies have as well, but not the first time leading a team, not the first time learning the offense, not the first time seeing the speed of the game up close like he has in 2 different training camps. So I think it is a little bit different. I generally understand what you're getting at there, which is like, look, you can't just put everything on his shoulders right away, but I didn't see a quarterback in training camp that I thought, oh man, they're going to have to act like this guy's Kelly Holcomb out there. They're going to have to act like this guy's Brooks Bollinger out there and just try to, dink and dunk, check it down, keep the train on the tracks. I don't think that they have to do that in order to beat the Chicago Bears. And if he does make a mistake, they move on, and he's done a good job at that before. Let's see. Zan says many people picking the Bears. I don't understand. Well, it's always going to go that way. They are the home team. It is Soldier Field. The Bears always get more attention. That always happens when it comes to Chicago until they get 4 or 5 weeks into the season, and then they realize that they're not the Chicago Bears that everyone invented in their mind. I mean, I remain skeptical on that team. I think that they're improved. Jeremiah was much higher on the offensive line than me. I'm going to kind of stay with that. I don't think Jonah Jackson's ever been that great. I think Drew Dahlman was a bit of a reach for how much they paid him and is not the greatest pass protector. I think they are vulnerable at left tackle. That's 3 positions in pass protection that I have questions about with that team. So I think that they can get after Caleb Williams there. But Chicago has improved. It's just show me where outside of the receiver position, they're very deep, that they have the superstar talent. If the quarterback is unbelievable, then yes, they'll be a lot better. But roster-wise, I think that they're much more of a B- type overall roster, where the Vikings are an A, and Detroit is still an A, and Green Bay has moved up to a B+ when it comes to overall roster. Philly is an A. There's other teams that are just better than Chicago. So Dusty says, love the optimism, but way too much purple Kool-Aid thinking 23-13. 23-13 is a total fair score. And that was really kind of the question there, which is, would you rather see him have a grind fest or a shootout? Because the over-under is right in the middle with, what did I say it was? 44.5 for the over-under. So that's kind of neither, or it's a little more grindy, I guess, but it's kind of neither. I think 23-13 is a little more toward the grind fest, and that would be a pretty good outcome for them. That would mean McCarthy plays pretty well. It means the defense plays really well, and there you go. Then you end up coming out of there 1-0, which is, of course, is the most important thing. But looks do kind of matter a little bit here because we're trying to get any sort of hints of what this is going to look like over the entire season. And 1 week definitely doesn't tell you all those answers. But, historically, week 1 has told us at least something about the Vikings and who they are. Like you think about the first week of Kevin O'Connell in 2022, and we saw some of the prowess of the play calling and getting Justin Jefferson open. You go, okay, this man is doing some things that we hadn't seen before. And then in 2023, the way they lost that Tampa Bay game, that showed some serious vulnerability of the defense under Brian Flores that year with a lack of talent. I think it also showed some of the offense's shortcomings in the run game and so forth. Like we can get a sense. I don't think we get all the answers or anywhere close, but at least you get a sense for what the team is going to look like and what the approach is going to be. So Jay Deasy says, Ben Johnson seems like a tyrant based on the weird things that leaked out of Bears camp. Not sure that Caleb will respond favorably to that kind of coaching. I have the same skepticism, Jay Deasy, because anytime we've heard stuff like that, it's Matt Patricia, who did a great job for Ohio State's defense, but did not do a great job as the Detroit Lions head coach. It's Matt Patricia. It's even Brian Flores as a head coach in Miami. Flores has become an incredible defensive coordinator, but it was the same sort of stuff. And on and on and on down the line of the Belichick disciples. Who was the, why am I blanking on? Oh, Joe Judge. That was the other guy who was the special teams coach and got hired by the Giants. And it was just odd stuff that was going on that you don't see happening anywhere else. And when you are just losing your mind every time there's a mistake, I don't know if that's the way to get through to a guy like Caleb Williams. And maybe the idea is we're going to toughen him up. Maybe he watched the Dallas Netflix and saw Jimmy Johnson toughening those guys up. And he doesn't care if a guy has asthma. You get out there and run. I don't care if you die on this field. That just doesn't sound like that's 2025 to me. That sounds like the 90s NFL. Sounds a little too much like Zimmer. And I hope you guys caught when Anthony Barr was talking yesterday. And remember, Barr is a very intelligent dude. And he slid in the smallest little nugget where he said, when I asked him about 2023 and what he learned about O'Connell, he said something like, he's the perfect coach for today's game. And I think that told you everything about maybe Mike Zimmer was the perfect coach for 1994. And as much as I love 1994 NFL, it's not that anymore. So does Caleb Williams respond to his coach going nuts? I even thought the guy from Tennessee, Callahan, remember in the Vikings game last year, the guy lost his mind. He went totally crazy on the sideline. You're like, does this work? Like, does this work to play? Do the players like to see their head coach just having a conniption all the time? Does that teach them the best way? I mean, these are adults. So I don't know if it does. I have my same skepticism about that, but there might be another part that Caleb Williams was soft and he needed to learn that this is the NFL. The NFL, it's not going to let you get far if you're going to be soft and oversensitive and flop around on the sideline like a fish and give up when your team is losing and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that is it, or maybe it really had to be drilled into him. The timing and all that stuff is everything in an offense. I think that trying to force the square peg into the round hole sounds a little bit suspicious to me. If you're asking him to play like Jared Goff, he is not going to be Jared Goff. So how do you let him be the playmaker that he is while also leaning into, getting him on time, getting him to see the field better than he does? Andrew says, can we really say KOC hates running the ball? I think he just knew how weak the interior offensive line was and didn't want to kill drives with tackles for loss. And Andrew, I've always left the door open for that. I think that the smoking guns, when it comes to plays that we could point to and say, okay, no matter how bad your run game was, you needed to be running the ball, there was the Green Bay game. They're up by 21 points or something, 17 points. And they're still trying to have Sam Darnold throw 20-yard touchdowns. The Jets game over in London, these are the ones that come to mind right off the bat. The Jets game in London where, you're at 3rd and 18 or something, and you should just run a draw, and instead they're throwing a 25-yard pass and it gets picked off. Or even in Jacksonville, where I know that Aaron Jones was banged up, and I know that he's still on the team, but Ty Chandler has taken his abuse from Kevin O'Connell in the media. Is the only player I could say that O'Connell has kind of nailed at the podium a few times, and he didn't trust him. But still, that was a game where your quarterback was not on point, and you needed to keep running, and they just kept throwing when they got to the red zone until they ran an end around and it got a 15-yard loss or something. So I think hates running the ball is not quite the right characterization. Is he going to be comfortable with sticking with it when it's working? That was my criticism last year, especially early in the year, is it would be working and you would be getting yards and you're winding clock and you're having longer drives. And then, you're throwing on 2nd and 5. And it's an incompletion. Now it's 3rd and 5. Now you have to pass. And just drives would die like that. And what does the other team love when you are losing? What do you need? You need some clock stoppages. You need the other team to throw an incomplete pass. Like the comeback game against the Colts. One of the reasons that happened was that they threw some incompletions. They threw at some bad, inopportune times, and they threw incompletions, and it helped the Vikings by stopping the clock. They've left some teams in the game because of that. But you're right. You are right to say this will be the real test of whether you can put together a run scheme. And they did, as I mentioned with Sirles, they did bring in, someone from the outside with a different background in running the football. That may help. I think schematically they did need some changes after last year. It's a big story for me because if you can run the ball as this team, if you could be the 10th best running team, I don't know how it fails other than JJ McCarthy just not knowing how to throw a football at all because you have so many weapons. I shot you 99. This is, does the lack of cornerback depth mean Flores plans on 3 safety looks as this season's identity? Well, I mean, they did that last year a ton with the 3 safeties. And, Shaq Griffin, how many, I'll look this up. I'm curious now. How often, when Shaq Griffin was in, let's find this out. When Shaq Griffin wasn't filling in for Stephon Gilmore, how many snaps did he play a game? Because I think that will tell us roughly how much we're going to see Jeff Okudah. Really bounced around for Shaq Griffin. Some games he played in the 40s in snaps early in the season. Well, they were playing from way ahead in those games, though. So if you're playing against Houston or Green Bay and you're up by 20 points, you're going to have extra corners in. When they played closer games like Detroit, LA, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, it was more of somewhere between, he only played 10 snaps against Jacksonville, 10 and 30, somewhere between 10 and 30. So if they play Jeff Okudah between 10 and 30 snaps, I think you're in pretty good shape there. And then 3 safeties the rest of the way. I guess my big question for the start of the season is if Harrison Smith can't go, then do you just have to play Jeff Okudah 45 snaps? That's where you might get a little bit on the nervous side. Rob says, do we really think JJ will be more nervous in front of 60,000 Chicago than he was 107 in Michigan at Saban Field? Rob, I've never found that to correlate. College is just different. It's just different. In college, Michigan was wildly better. And I know you're referring to the Alabama game that was big, and he was very good in that game. But when they play Washington, they're wildly better than Washington. It's just different. The pressure of the NFL, the players in the NFL, the media covering the NFL is just so much different. Everything is than college. And is he going to feel nervous? You bet he is. Absolutely he's going to feel nervous. That doesn't mean he's going to fall apart in front of all of us. And, I think you're right to say this guy's been on big stages from the time that he was in high school. And there is some element of being used to that. But it is different. It is very different in the NFL. There's been many guys who came from great college program. I mean, hey, look, Lewis Cine was unbelievable in college and then got on the NFL field and just didn't know what to do. I have not seen McCarthy seem intimidated by anything, including the New England Patriots and the joint practices, but it is different. I mean, this is a long journey for him to get here. I'm sure there'll be plenty of nerves, and that's why, first drive, I am really interested first drive. Is KOC going to try to deal with those by taking a shot, play action, first play of the game, and try to get a 50-yard completion? Or do we see a little bit of this, a little bit more slow play out? I think you'd love to see from the Vikings in their opening drive 14 plays, completion to Hawkinson, completion to Thielen, handoff to Mason, swing pass to Jones, like just a slow churn of like, this is how we're going to win today, and then get McCarthy into the mix that way. But you just don't really know until they get out there. But that first 15 plays is going to be really something to watch for KOC, because at times he's been very, very aggressive out of the gate. And there were other times where he dinked and dunked down the field and then maybe didn't stick with that throughout the game, but effectively did a lot with Kirk with opening drives. So very successful with those first 15 plays since he's been here. Marauder says, I think KOC just couldn't run. Look behind the line tackles in this year. He had never had an offensive line. I agree that the offensive line was a huge part of it. It was a huge part of why they could not run effectively. And that's something that should change this quite a bit, I think. But we'll see if he does actually want to stay with it or just use it as a means to get to passing, which is kind of how he did it before. But the play action game has been really good. Seldom seen. They can't let Caleb Williams get comfortable. Flores is going to release the hounds. So that's another thing. We've talked so much about McCarthy already. The game is next Monday, but come on, let's break this thing down. As far as, facing Caleb Williams, that's where I think if they have 4 to be able to rush and get after Caleb Williams, Hargrave, Allen, the edge rushers, that's going to be the hardest thing for him to deal with. I think that's the hardest thing for Ben Johnson to deal with, is if they can get after him with 4. Ben Johnson can pick apart some blitzes and pick apart some, strange coverages and different looks. But there's really, as you saw in the Super Bowl, there's really no answer when you can get after a team with 4. There's no real I was reading the word schedule. There's really no scheme that just defeats a 4-man rush. If you are winning with your front 4, there isn't anything you can really do because everything becomes so much easier for the coverage. You could drop everybody back. You can sit in those zones. That's really how the Vic Fangio defense is so good or so horrible if you don't have that. If you can't get there with 4, it can be atrocious because it's so difficult for the cornerbacks if they're just sitting in those zones. But if they don't have to wait very long back there, and the quarterback has to pick apart who's where, that's where it gets really tricky. So I think, those acquisitions of Hargrave and Allen, I mean, those are enormous in a game like this. Let's see. Vegas Patriots as Vikings get 180 rushing yards. That's certainly possible. Rob points out the Giants were a 1-point underdog last year and lost by 25. Well, look, if Vegas knew everything, then how fun would this be? Wouldn't be at all. That's what makes it interesting. But I just, I'm just pointing out, and I guess, it is true though, that hype teams are always bad bets, right? And I'm not a gambling expert by any means, but hype teams are bad bets. If you have a team like Chicago that's just getting pumped up by everybody all off season, that's going to be bad money to put down in general, I think. Those of you who are better at gambling can confirm that. But I think that goes for almost anything. Like if you were betting on UNC, you're not getting a good price there because everybody's betting on UNC. Everyone was thinking that Belichick was going to run TCU off the field. That's what all the analysts were saying. So maybe because all the analysts constantly overrate the Chicago Bears, that could mean that, the money is going a little bit more toward them when it doesn't deserve to be. Or it also could be just a 1.5 point favorite because nobody knows. And the same thing with last year with Sam Darnold. Chris says Soldier Field is slow, so it's going to negate our speed. It shouldn't be right now. Look, fast guys are going to be fast. If it was a slop fest, if it's raining, maybe if that's the case. If it was raining, it's gnarly out there on the field, then yeah, that could hurt a little bit. But I think at the beginning of the season, before that thing has been torn to shreds, it should be okay. It should be all right. Let's see. Seldom Seen says JJ's in his hometown. First NFL game, realizing your dream Monday Night Football. Most quarterbacks would be hyperventilating in the tunnel. Well, and that's, I'm friends with a sports psychologist. Get to meet a lot of people in the industry. And he was talking to me about nerves and how he's interviewed players plenty of times about big plays. And he has asked them about, like, were you nervous? Remember when there was an example that he used where TJ Oshie, remember when it was the Olympics and TJ Oshie had to score in the shootout like every time? And there was a interview where they said, like, were you nervous? And he said, of course I was. I couldn't even feel my legs, just every time I was going back there. And there's also a story about Joe Montana trying to call a timeout in the Super Bowl when he leads the game-winning drive against Cincinnati, because he couldn't breathe. He was like so nervous and anxious that he couldn't breathe. And he was trying to call a timeout. I think Bill Walsh told this story, and Walsh was like, we don't call a timeout right now. Like, keep going. He didn't realize it. And yet the best athletes who are clutch, they usually find a way to not let that overwhelm them or work their way through it or focus on what they have been taught and what they know. But there's no stopping the nerves there. I mean, you heard Anthony Barr's story about throwing up before every game. That's how nervous these guys get before NFL games. I mean, it's crazy. Like, look, I get nervous before covering games. I can't imagine how McCarthy's I'm going to be sitting. This happens every single game day for me. I'm very nervous every game because I know like how much there is going to be to do and can't wait to find out what's going to happen. And, want to make sure that I get everything right and do the best post game I can, all that stuff. That's a pretty small thing in comparison to actually playing on Monday Night Football. So it's how well they manage those nerves. And then when you get into the flow of the game, that's where you start to, calm down. And as they say, just play football, as I think Carson Wentz had mentioned to him. But yeah, I mean, you're going to be super nervous to start that game. So if you're O'Connell, can you just get him going a little bit? Now, is that throwing a 50-yard bomb on the first play? I don't know about that. Maybe that's a swing pass to Aaron Jones that gets you 10 yards. And then, okay, well, like we're rolling. I completed the first pass and off we go. How they deal with that, I think, is going to be very interesting in that first drive. Let's see. A lot of good stuff from you guys tonight. I mean, I can tell, what's great is I can tell that you guys are as amped up about this as me. Mr. Mayor says, somehow convinced myself before every game that this is the one where we're going to end up with 600 yards passing, 18 catches, 4 touchdowns. The defense gets 20 sacks. I'm so excited for the season. Yeah, I could tell with that. There's kind of thinking about all the different scenarios. I don't think that's a scenario. I don't think 20 sacks and 600 yards is a scenario, but I do think that there's a wide range for this game. The scenario where Caleb Williams just rips them apart is a little bit hard to see, but they do have a lot of weapons. They do have, as Jeremiah talked about, an improved offensive line. And it's really going to be for Williams on their side, on the Bears side. And we will talk to, Courtney Cronin at some point this week, but on the Bears side, this game is going to be a whole referendum on Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. You talk about pressure. I mean, that team talk about nerves. Like that team has so much pressure because what's resting for Caleb Williams, and you can bet that after the game, when you turn on the TV the next day, if the Vikings win 23-13 and you're like, wonder what they have to say about my squad. I promise you they will be talking about Caleb Williams. No matter what happens, they're going to be talking about Caleb Williams. If he has a bad game, it's going to be that it didn't work with Ben Johnson. They should be hitting the panic button. Caleb Williams is a bust. And if he has a good game, then it's, oh, this is the year for Caleb Williams. Like that's why we do such long conversations for every detail and talk about the punt returner and everything, because these two outcome conversations are frustrating, but you can really bet though that that's going to be the main discussion. So the pressure is, I think, on Chicago more. They're the team that's at home. They're the team that has the quarterback that is under the white hot lights so much over the last year, and getting a coach fired already in your first year, that puts you in the spotlight to be talked about like that with those extremes after one game. So both quarterbacks are going to be having a lot of the same feelings, I think. Okay, let's see. So let me remind you of the FanDuel question of the day, by the way, if you're just joining, was the over-under for Vikings-Bears is 44.5. Would you rather have the Vikings play a grind fest or a shootout? So grind fest hits the under and they win, or shootout over and they win, which gives them a better chance to win. Also want to remind you about a really good friend of mine and her great podcast. The show brought to you by Denisa Tova and her team at Tova QDRO and Retirement Valuators. If you guys are like me and your only knowledge of lawyers and judges is just based on watching Law and Order, then this is a great podcast for you to learn about the real lives of people in the law sphere. Denisa Tova's Beyond the Bar podcast. It is not deep in the weeds law talk. It's real conversations with judges and lawyers about what life is really like working with the law, what makes them laugh, what drives them, and the real work-life balance of working in law. And every so often, Denisa will have a surprise celebrity guest, such as me. I went on her show. She's a huge supporter of Purple Insider, and I really appreciate her and her husband, Glenn. They love the show here, and I loved going on with their show. So anyway, off the mic, Denisa runs a forensic retirement lab. So if you're a divorce lawyer and your client's 401k and IRA was around before the marriage and now it's blended like a bad trick play, she and her team can help you untangle it. You'll want to find Denisa's Settlement Language Lab, a free session for law firms, like a training camp for retirement drafting. If you want in, just type in Denisa Tova, that is Tova, on LinkedIn. Send her a message that you heard it on the show here and you're interested in the Settlement Lab or curious about her podcast, Beyond the Bar. So we've got in a few minutes here, Maggie Robinson with the Robinson Roundup, where we look at a few things around the league. There was an interesting article she discovered from The Athletic where executives make their predictions. And so they left out something when it came to the Vikings in their predictions that we'll talk about. Jay Deasy says, if Sirles thinks the Bears O-line is top 5, but only thinks they win 6 games, it's safe to say he isn't buying Caleb. It's hard right now to buy Caleb, isn't it? And as much as I think we never know nothing, I mean, look at first years of quarterbacks. I did this exercise a while back when Geno Smith kind of hit big in Seattle for that 1 year. I looked back at all the quarterbacks in the draft over the last, 20 years. What were they like in their first year starting, second year, and third year? And it was really the second and third years that were so much more telling. There were rookies who had terrible rookie years, Eli Manning, Jared Goff, who became good quarterbacks, but there were very, very rarely guys who were bad in their second year and then still became good quarterbacks, guys who were bad in their third year and still became good quarterbacks. So this will be very telling. But also just from the standpoint of what succeeds as an NFL quarterback, what skill sets, what things can take you down, what doesn't succeed. The biggest thing that fails in the NFL is when a guy can't play in rhythm. And this is why you hear KOC talk about it all the time. Rhythm and timing. You're like, oh, all right, Kev, I get it. You want, Nick Mullins to play with rhythm and timing. I get it. But he's absolutely right. And what Caleb Williams doesn't play with is rhythm and timing. He lowers his eyes with the pass rush. He senses the rush when it's not there. Watch those college quarterbacks. Watch how often, when I was watching Cade Klubnik the other day, I think that's his name, Clemson guy, the last play of the game where he's still got a chance to go win the game, tie the game, whatever it was, They send a blitz up the middle. No one had gotten loose yet, and he bailed out of the pocket and they chased him down. That's the stuff that always, when I see, I go, oh, I don't know. It's the thing I like about JJ McCarthy the absolute most is that he drops back and he's a little bit like young Goff like this, finds where he's supposed to throw with the football and gets rid of it. There's not a lot of like ducking in the pocket. And this is Sam Howell in practice all the time, just kind of ducking in the pocket, eyes go down in the pressure, not knowing where to go with the ball. That's Caleb Williams. Can you fix that? Bears fans thought you could with Justin Fields, found out you can't. There are still people who love Justin Fields and are buying him. You're not going to convince me that a guy who drops his eyes in the pocket, who bails out of clean pockets early, that doesn't see the field very well, that doesn't play in rhythm, you're just not going to convince me that those guys are good. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen play in rhythm all the time. And Josh Allen is just a complete, total freak show. 6'5", 6'6", 250 pounds. Like he can sit in there and just knock off defensive ends coming after him, but he never takes sacks. You look at Josh Allen, he holds onto the ball sometimes a little bit, but he never takes sacks. And guys who take sacks always, that to me is usually I'm out if somebody takes 50, 60 sacks. So I think there's plenty of reason for skepticism with Caleb Williams. Mr. Marauder says Vegas does not pick winners. They pick numbers that split the money. You're absolutely right about that. And that's where I think that there's probably a lot of money based on the popularity of Chicago. Marshall says JJ will throw for 250, run for 2 touchdowns. And the Vikes win by 10. That's where another area that you could take just a tiny little sample size of the preseason game. And we can learn something about JJ McCarthy. I think his running game is going to be big for him this year. Very big. And you saw that when they got through the Texans on a blitz, that he was able to take advantage of that and get first downs. You'd like to see him use that a lot. You would definitely like to see him use that a lot. I Shot You 99 says maybe you need to ask McCarthy about some meditating sessions. I actually wrote a story about it last year. You could go find it, Purple Insider, with my friend Justin Anderson, the sports psychologist. Yep. So I did a big story about, I asked McCarthy about his meditation, and then I asked the sports psychologist about it. And he works with a lot of pro teams and got great answers about it. And you know what? And McCarthy's described it very well, that it's not climbing the Himalayan mountains or something weird. It's just some exercises to calm down like your natural brain functions. And it was really interesting to find out about that, though. There's a lot of like brain makeup and how your brain responds to stuff that meditation can work with. So it's definitely not like something weird or strange. But I learned a lot about it if you want to go find that story. Let's see. The dude wants a grind fest. Don't blame you for that. I think the Vikings are a little better suited for a grind fest. Depends on DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Bitter Bruce. This game more than many comes down to who wins the trenches. Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of games do, but in this one where I think the Vikings have an advantage, if they're going to win, they are going to win in the trenches. Yeah. High Times KG. Anybody else nervous about the season? I want McCarthy to be good, but what if he's not? I as I said, I always get, nervous for this thing to get going and for games to start and so forth. But yeah, I think that where Vikings fans should stand on that, I know you're not referring to the nervousness before a football game. You're talking about nervous about the worst case scenario. It's out there. But if I were pie charting, why don't I just offer myself a pie chart for outcomes for this season? The one that I would be most confident in giving a low percentage is that none of this works. And it's just awful, and he can't play, and they're fumbling all over the place on offense, and they finish 25th in offense, and they just stink, and they win 6 games. Like, outside of an injury to McCarthy, based on what I've seen over the last 2 camps, that just doesn't seem possible. They have too much talent. Even if he was really struggling, they can run the ball still, and they have a really good defense still. And they were in 2023, when they were a much worse roster, they were still a interception a touchdown. No, was it an interception? Was it a fumble? Oh, a fumble in Denver. They were a fumble by Alexander Madison away from closing out the Denver Broncos. They were a freaking crazy tush push away from closing out the Cincinnati Bengals. They were a wide open Jefferson away. They almost won 10 games with Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs playing in 2023. It's hard to see a scenario where you can't be in the conversation for going to the playoffs. But the rest of the outcomes are all equal to me. If they ended up winning 9 games and being a wild card team or going into the last week not knowing if they were going to make it, that wouldn't shock me, and that would mean that McCarthy had some struggles along the way. The most outcome that I think will happen is that they win 10 or 11 games and they're right in that mix and they go into the playoffs and you don't know what's going to happen. And then there's also a reasonable chance that the team's just great. I mean, Brock Purdy in his first season as a starter was great. CJ Stroud with the Texans was great. You know, they won a playoff game in his, didn't they? Did they win a playoff game? Yeah, they beat the Browns, right? In CJ Stroud's first game. I mean, you've seen young quarterbacks have a lot of success right away in the NFL. It's not like, oh, he's a young quarterback, it can't happen. But as far as outcomes go, the one where it goes really bad is the one that I think is the least plausible. And even if he does get injured from time to time, then you do have Carson Wentz who can go in and win a game for you. So they have kind of covered a lot of their bases there. Dusty says those old pros always talk about the quarterback and receiver being able to run plays in the dark because they had the timing. And while that's one thing that I'm wondering about how that goes, how is the timing going to go for JJ McCarthy and Justin Jefferson and his wide receivers? But because you still need, time for those guys to get together. Alex, is Manny going to pick the schedule this week? He is. Yes, he is on Thursday. I actually got something special for you Thursday, working on this. Manny's going to pick the schedule, and myself and Brian Murphy are both going to analyze it. So that'll be really fun. And every single week, I think what we're going to do this year is, because I like the consistency of what time we go live, what we're going to do is have Manny Hill and Brian Murphy the evening after games. We'll see what happens next week. It's Monday Night Football. Might just go, on Thursday. But Monday and Thursday are when Manny Hill's going to be on. And I think on Thursdays, we're going to have him pick the schedule as like Thursday Night Football is going on. Kind of watch along / pick the schedule. It's going to be fun. Yeah, I can't wait to have Manny back on the show. One of my best friends, one of my favorite people. So can't wait to have him back. I don't make him work through June, though. I just can't do that to him. But that's an exciting bit to have back. And last year was really fun because, when Manny picked like 11 or 12 wins, we're like, come on, Manny, relax. And then as they went along, they kept winning. And after they lost the 2 games, he may have dropped it by 5 wins the next week. It's very fun. You guys can play along at home. It's good. I'm looking forward to it. Son of Beavers, how many sacks do we get in this game? I'm going to throw out 4, but I mean, I have no idea, but four, I would go over under is 2.5. Maybe would you go over under for sacks? Hire me, FanDuel. Sam says Sean Payton said how the first time he saw Drew Brees, he was amazed at how quickly he processed things and could keep track of multiple things at once. That's what I'm hoping McCarthy has. Yeah, the brain of Drew Brees is unbelievable. And somebody told me once that Brees, because he was so short, couldn't really see that well, but he could identify vacancies of the defense. So what he would look for is not necessarily his receivers and watch them run across the field. And I would be really interested. I wish we had maybe I could watch some all 22 and see if you could get the sense for where his helmet's going, but where he would mostly focus on where linebackers and safeties had moved. So if it's cover 1, if it's like a robber thing and the safety moves down, then there's vacated space in certain areas. And that's where he would throw to because he would know the timing of his receivers and know that when he had to make his decisions and where they would be. These guys who are the best at it, gosh, you watch college, you see 2 or 3 quarterbacks get drafted in the first round. It's so hard to play this position. The guys who can do it, like Drew Brees, the highest level, they have stuff going on in their brains that I think none of us could really fully understand. And he had that, whatever it was, this freakish ability to see it without needing to see it. And I don't know if McCarthy has that, but I think what he has is a a timing about things where he understands if it doesn't come out there, it needs to come out. And I don't see him hanging onto the ball. Like Breeze is all-time freakish when it comes to that stuff. But I think that McCarthy sees the field pretty well, where even in those preseason games, he was not hanging onto the ball. He drops back. He has a good idea of what the defense is doing, and the ball comes out. That's the best trait you can have other than absolutely insane freakishness like, a Josh Allen or whatever. Yeah, anytime that Sean Payton comes up, Anytime Sean Payton comes up. Mr. Mayor, I'll have to see about Carmen Vitale. I'd love to get together with her again at some point. We'll have to see. She's a good friend of the show. But definitely, Kaylin Kaler actually is coming on tomorrow. That's the plan. Kaylin Kaler from ESPN. She also resides in Chicago. So we're going to hear from her, Courtney Cronin, Andrew Kramer later on in the week. It's going to be a good week, my friends. Mike Shope on the fantasy side. It's going to be a good week. So, okay. Well, this has been a really fun conversation, and I also had a fun discussion with Maggie Robinson for the Robinson Rundown, our special contributor, former intern. She got a new title now with Purple Insider. So every week, what we're going to do on Tuesday nights, we'll have Jeremiah Sirles, Tuesday morning left guard. That'll be here every Tuesday night. And then to end the show, Maggie Robinson is going to have her look around the NFL. Always a fun and lighthearted conversation. So here's myself and Maggie. I guess we'll put a wrap on the show. Maybe I'll pop back in and see where you guys are at. If you guys don't go crazy in the comment section, we'll see. All right. Good night if not. Here's Maggie. All right, we welcome in Maggie Robinson, special contributor to Purple Insider. And it is time once again for the Robinson Rundown, which we had planned for last week, but then we just got hit with breaking news over and over again, couldn't pull it off. So Maggie Robinson is back. And now that the NFL is settling into its normal schedule, we will be doing this each week. So Maggie, welcome back. And I am very curious to hear what is on your mind for the Robinson Rundown, where you take a look around the NFL. So what's going on? How are you?
I'm good. Happy week one. I feel like we've been waiting all year for this and we finally made it. And I love this week because it's the most delusionally optimistic time of the year because everyone's healthy. Everyone has a great team hypothetically if they look at the right people. Like every reporter you've ever read is having the time of their life right now. But I can't wait to get into it and then see what shakes out in these first 5 to 6 weeks. That is the critical time period. Weeks 1 through 3 don't really matter that much. You're still kind of trying the shoes on. Weeks 3 through 6, that's when you really figure it out. So with that being said, I'm going to take you through some predictions for the beginning of the NFL season.
Okay. I am interested in predictions. By the way, I did in June my 50 predictions that I do every year, and I was looking over them and I was like, I don't think I'm going to do good this year. So I am curious to find out what you have and what I think you've got an article of executives and what they're predicting around the NFL and if any of them match up with some of mine.
Yeah, so this kind of episode is shaped around an article from Jeff Howe and his colleagues at The Athletic, where they did a poll where they talked to NFL coaches and executives on the basis of anonymity and tried to get a feel for what their predictions are heading into week one. So they asked a lot of different questions, and I'm going to read through some of these answers, and we're going to talk about them in this episode. So let's just kick it off. This one you can't even avoid. Who's going to fill the Micah Parsons-shaped void that is left in Dallas? Is tough.
Charles Haley. I don't know. Charles Haley played in the 80s and 90s, if you were wondering. Honestly, when I look at their roster and I look at their defense and think about where they were just a couple of years ago, and now Trayvon Diggs is coming back for them. They just signed Deron Bland to an enormous contract. So their secondary should be at least reasonable at the cornerback position. If they can get turnovers, like those guys both are kind of interception hounds where they may not cover the best on a play-to-play basis, but they're going to get picks and they're going to change the game. But I mean, Osa Odigizua is a very good defensive tackle when it comes to creating pressure. He was one of the better in the league last year on the inside, but off of the edge, and even when it comes to, stopping the run, Kenny Clark in his previous years was as good as it got. And so if a team acquired Kenny Clark, I'd be like, oh, well, if he's got something left, then that's great. Last year, though, it was not the same Kenny Clark that destroyed the Minnesota Vikings in the past. So it's not that they don't have a good interior or at least players with talent there, but off the edges, I'm not sure how they're going to pressure the quarterback. If Clark doesn't throw back to 2023, not sure how they're going to do it from the inside. Are they going to blitz all the time? Now that Mike Zimmer is out as their defensive coordinator, I don't know what they're going to do strategically, but this just seems like Maggie, before you got here, the Vikings, when they fired their previous head coach, they were kind of like sliding down a slippery wall, like just with their fingernails, like, no, we don't have to rebuild. No. And that's kind of how the Dallas Cowboys feel. And, maybe trading Micah Parsons is almost admitting in some ways that they had to, even though that's not a good idea to trade away Micah Parsons, but at least they got draft picks out of it.
Jerry Jones had to do something. Whether this was the right choice, I would vote no, but it does feel like an admission of, you know what, hands in the air, it's not going to be our year, and so be it. It almost feels like a let's get through it kind of season, and we haven't even started. My look here is Dante Fowler. And Dante Fowler, to put this in terms that I, as a young woman, understand, feels like trying to replace Parsons with Fowler is like settling for that guy who seems like maybe he could be the one. Like, he's not bad. He's not phenomenal, but he's not bad. But the standard was set so high by your ex that you just can't, nothing's going to live up to it, Like Micah Parsons sets the bar so high, no one else is going to come close to him.
When you say, I don't know the feeling there, although I have only ever had one lady in my life, married the first girlfriend. So that's probably what Dallas should have done, is just stuck with, through thick and thin, Micah Parsons. But, Dante Fowler is a guy who's had some moments throughout his career, but not so much consistency in terms of his pass rush production. And that's what I mean, where it's like, who is going to consistently bring production other than Odigizua, who, and this is where it doesn't match up when you talk about timeline wise. They did not have to pay Odigizua, but they brought him back on a pretty sizable contract, and now they signed Bland to a big contract. So it's not like they have just gone out of their way to avoid spending any money, let go everybody, and then try to go to the bottom and rebuild. And oh, by the way, we should mention they got George Pickens. That's kind of a push the chips to the middle of the table move, because Pickens is kind of crazy at times and frustrating, I think, for the Steelers at times. They paid CeeDee Lamb huge money in his prime. They have an incredibly high paid quarterback. It really does sound so much like where the Vikings were when they fired Mike Zimmer and hired Kevin O'Connell, because there was enough talent there to say, well, this team should at least be 500, but there was nowhere near, and with the expensive quarterback, there was nowhere near enough talent to say they can actually compete. And the Vikings did a lot of this. Like, oh, Dante Fowler, like, maybe they'll bring in this guy, and if he's amazing, then, they brought back Sheldon Richardson at one point. There was a few different players that came in. It was like Bashad Breeland is the one that sticks out to me, who was just a guy at corner. And it was like, maybe now if he's amazing, then that will be, but the chances of that actually happening were pretty low. And so now with them starting out the season as the first football we see, it's kind of like air out of the balloon with Micah Parsons not there, and feels like Philadelphia should have a huge advantage in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being biased, but go Birds here in this situation in week one. I just don't think Dallas has the firepower to make this happen.
I don't think so either. What was your reaction though of Parsons getting traded to Green Bay? Because for me, I was really shocked that he went within the conference. I thought at very least, if you were going to trade one of the best players in the NFL, do it to Jacksonville or something, like get him away from the NFC, not a team that you have to play later on this year. And by the way, it does work to the Vikings' advantage that they don't have to face Parsons, at least for that game in Dallas. They'll have to face him twice against Green Bay. That's not great for the Vikings, but when they go against Dallas, not much to be feared. But I was really surprised why, when the Vikings traded Stephon Diggs, they were like, Buffalo, get him away from the NFC. We know this guy's really good at football. Send him somewhere else.
Yeah, this one felt a little shocking. It felt a little messy and forced on all ends, truthfully. Like, everyone's hands were a little bit tied. Something had to happen. And this is what occurred. Like, is it ideal in a lot of realms? No, it didn't even sound like, had Micah Parsons had his way, he would have preferred to stay in Dallas, but there was just no realm of possibility in which that was going to happen. But yeah, I was shocked when this news came out. All my friends were texting me. They're like, "Oh my God, are you seeing this? This is insane." So I think it kind of caught everybody by surprise, but we'll see. Also, one thing about Micah Parsons I found out today, the man might play in week 1, but he might need an epidural in his back for his back injury.
Not ideal. Not ideal.
Crazy statement.
It is, especially because they're playing Detroit. And this is one of the most interesting games for Vikings fans to watch while they're waiting around until Monday Night Football. That's a game that could determine who wins the NFC North at the end of the day. And if he doesn't play, long term, it's still good for the Packers, but that would be a big L for them to not have their new toy and be without Kenny Clark for that first week against a team that, when they could protect Jared Goff, they are extremely, extremely good. But let me ask you a question here. Did anything else happen in the rest of the week? Because I feel like the only stories that have been covered in football are Bill Belichick being an awful college coach and Micah Parsons. And I don't think I've seen any other headline about any other subject. So I was hoping you might have other stuff.
I do. I want to say the one thing I found, Arch Manning.
Oh,
the most flop of flops in his debut. Not a lot happened for him, but that's the only other news I heard about.
It was against Ohio State in Ohio State. Not the easiest way to start out your college career. But how about some of these predictions from NFL executives? What do we got there?
Let's get to it. So the Cincinnati Bengals, the prediction here is that they have the strongest 2-man offense, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, so the insiders from this athletic poll were super optimistic regarding the offense here, and they have good reason to be. Let's look at Joey B last season. This is your reigning comeback player of the year, and I'm sure he hates that title. So he led the NFL with 460 completions, just under 5,000 yards, 43 touchdowns. He threw interceptions at a 1.4% rate. That is so low. He just had a great season, and the athletic poll had him ranked at number 1 most likely to win MVP. And the final icing on the cake here, everyone said he had the best training camp of his life. This is the best they have seen Joe Burrow. If we haven't seen prime Joe Burrow, then what have we been watching?
Okay, that is a little bit typical off-season football-y. I'm trying to look something up real quick. I'm just out of curiosity. And look, I am a Burrow believer, 100%. I think he's an incredible quarterback. Any team would take him. You can win a Super Bowl with him. But I am curious about some of these numbers. Last year, so it's kind of funny. Last year, he threw for 1,700 yards, almost 1,800 yards when his team was losing. And when his team was losing, he had a 18-2 touchdown to interception ratio and a 120.3 rating when his team was losing. Now, of course, that's good if you have Burrow and you can, stay in any game, but also a little bit fraudulent with the stats. Like when your team is down, you're playing desperately, the other team is playing prevent defenses, and you can rack up some kind of bogus stats. And they were playing from behind all the time last year because they weren't a good, complete football team. They didn't run it that well. They've certainly played horrendous defense. So I get where people would look at these stats and even executives would be like, wow, he was so good last year. But if they're a better overall football team with a new defensive coordinator, I'm not entirely sure they are, but if they are, then he might not rack up quite this many numbers. Because if you look at when he was leading, no quarterback ever puts up bigger numbers when they're leading because you're playing safer, more conservative, you're running more often. So I think that their goal should be to win more and lead more and not have Burrow put up these type of stats. But I think he's the clear cut. You have, I think, the big three of Jackson and Mahomes and Allen. And then there's Joe Burrow, who's right outside the glass door, kind of looking at the other three. And then there's a big gap, and it's everybody else after that. The Vikings, they're going to find out. I mean, week 3, Vikings and Cincinnati Bengals, and that has the potential to be, I think, a shootout and maybe a game where we find out a lot about JJ McCarthy. Yeah,
that's going to be a really solid one. And those stats a little inflated when they're all looked at out of context and just written on a page. Could have influenced these insiders' decisions. I'm not sure. They also were asked to vote on the best non-quarterback offensive player. And surprise, it's Jamar Chase by a mile. Far and away got the most votes. Second up was Barkley, but not even close in numbers of voting. So Jamar Chase and the stats they gave us led the NFL last season with 127 catches, 1,700 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns.
I mean, I think anybody who puts Jamar Chase as the top position player in the NFL, you're being totally fair. I would not put Saquon Barkley ahead of Justin Jefferson, even though Barkley had an incredible season, historic season, all that. I think the impact of a downfield wide receiver is greater than a running back, even when he has an unbelievable season like Barkley did. And if we're looking toward this year, Barkley to me is regression central. Like that's just what happens when you have a historic running back season. The Vikings even know this from Adrian Peterson when he almost broke the rushing record. The next season had about 1.5 yards less per carry, even though he's still good. That's what we've seen from all of the 2,000-yard runners. Whereas Jefferson, his statistics are unbelievably consistent. I'm not entirely sure that Chase is better than Justin Jefferson. I think that they're a little bit different, but I'm surprised that Jefferson's name didn't come up more than Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, they were very confident on both of these Bengals votes. And that's why I felt like this was something to talk about. I was like, they're putting it all out there. These executives say, this is what we think. So that's what they said. Another prediction here. We love doing these. School hasn't even started. Football isn't even here yet. The way too early defensive rookie of the year prediction. Drumroll, please. Abdul Carter. Is that shocking to anyone? No, probably not.
No, I actually do think, and I've started to see a little bit more buzz on this recently, and maybe some people going a little too far on the Giants, but that defense for the Giants is pretty serious. That D-line with Dexter Lawrence is, to me, he's a top 10 player in the entire league. That's a non-quarterback. And then Abdul Carter, I thought at times when the few times I saw him in preseason looked like he had some serious jolt to him. The only thing I would say about that is oftentimes edge rushers have a more difficult time racking up sacks as rookies. Historically, we've talked about this a lot with Dallas Turner, but historically, it's one of the hardest positions to translate the production right away and usually takes another year. There's a couple of players I think in as far as the defensive race that could be interesting, including like Kenneth Grant from Miami. I don't know how many people are going to be paying attention to Miami this year because I think that they're as mid as it gets. Them and Dallas are kind of like in the same spot, but I thought Kenneth Grant was an absolute beast, and I could see him right away making an impact on their interior. But flashy edge rusher, if he gets 8 or 9 sacks, then probably is a lock for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, and something that stood out to me about Abdul Carter is just how versatile he is. They can put him at 3 different positions, and he will do exceptionally well at all of them. That's due to his incredible athleticism. He's really quick off the first step off the line. And apparently his teammates have even said this. Brian Burns, who he is in competition with effectively, said he's a dog. He's a little raw, but his athleticism is just unparalleled, and you can't teach that. And I think that's what everyone looks at when they look at Abdul Carter. They look at his size, and they look at the skills that are ones we can't teach you in the NFL. Are you physically gifted? And he is.
And that's a freak's position too. That is the best guys in the league are like Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons. They are just completely different types of athletes. I do wonder about what people think of Travis Hunter and his chances for Defensive Player of the Year, because it really depends on how much he's going to play corner. So that's something that I am looking for. I kind of have a running list in my head of, well, I get to watch football on Sunday. So what am I taking notes on of what I want to talk about on Sunday night, right? And how much does Travis Hunter, snap count wise, play offense and defense? Because I think that if he just focused on being a corner, he could be an elite corner. Unbelievable playing the football, crazy ball skills. So he could get 5 or 6 picks. But if he's only going to play 20 snaps over there or 25 snaps on defense and 30 snaps on offense, or is he going to play 80 snaps and it's going to be freaking crazy every single week? Mason Graham was also top 5 pick. Again, it's hard to get people to pay attention to the Browns, but if he puts up numbers, he would be another one on the list. Hard to find another candidate that jumps out to you right away that you think would be like immediately ready. For whatever reason, Pittsburgh played Derek Harmon in the preseason. He got hurt. Jahdae Barron from the Broncos was one of my favorite players in the draft. James Pierce for the Falcons. There's a guy the Vikings are going to face. So there's a lot of competition here for Abdul Carter right off the bat.
When you look at Travis Hunter, do you think that him playing offense and defense is going to be more limiting than it will be if he just focused on one.
Yeah, I think if I were him, I would be wanting to just be a corner in the NFL and just be the best corner in the NFL, as opposed to being maybe 2/3 of the player you could be. But I don't know. Like, I would have said, if you told me, hey, there's a guy in Major League Baseball, he actually pitches and hits, I'd be like, okay, that sounds wonderful for my softball team, but that does not sound great for Major League Baseball. And then Shohei Ohtani did it. There's a lot of things throughout history of sports where we've thought, that's you can't shoot half court threes all the time. And Steph Curry said, okay, maybe I can though. Right. And there's not many other Steph Currys in the NBA, but one guy could do it. And maybe the same thing goes. And look, Deion Sanders, when he was in the NFL, there was a season where he played wide receiver all the time, was still an elite corner, was still a great punt returner. They were able to do it. It's not impossible, but as a guy that has some injury history to him, I don't love it for him to try to do a lot of both. If it were me, it would be 55 snaps at corner and 10 snaps at receiver. But I don't know what they have in mind. It sounds like from their training camp, and they had one of their reporters who kept the snap counts of his reps, and it was like 50-50 in training camp. So it looks like they're really going to do this.
Okay. I mean, then this is a huge storyline to watch then, because who knows? He could be this freak athlete and be the one of one like we're seeing with Shohei Ohtani in baseball. I don't know, but you got to wonder. Fingers crossed he can stay healthy.
Great storyline for week 1 for sure.
And then to wrap it up, we talked about the lines a little bit. Hear me out here. I think they're going to fall short of expectations, and so does this athletic poll, and overwhelmingly so. So I think I said this back in June, and I will say it again with my chest. They won't be as good as they were last year. There were too many changes, and I just don't think that continuity is possible coming into this season. Let's run through the laundry list of why not. They lost 2 coordinators, okay? Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, gone. Head coaches, happy for them, unfortunate for the Lions. They lost Frank Ragnow at center. That's like your coach on the field, gone. Okay, they released Dan Skipper, a vet. Is he phenomenal? No, but what does that do for morale in the locker room? Tanks it, because everyone loves Dan Skipper, okay? They cut their roster down to 50 people to make room for trades. That shows me that they have low confidence in their guys and that they really need to be making some moves here. And they stunk it up at the Hall of Fame game. Not that matters. 34-7 is embarrassing in Canton, Ohio. I rest my case.
Okay, there's some reaches there. They did bring back Dan Skipper on the practice squad, so he's technically still in the building. I think you're being funny with that, though. Their top red zone weapon, Dan Skipper. And I have never known the Hall of Fame game to predict the season. So those are funny answers. But I think your first two are dead on, where when you change coordinators, you just don't know what it's going to be like. And Jared Goff and Ben Johnson were tied at the hip. They understood each other so well. Now it's a different voice in the headset, and this is another thing the Vikings can relate to. 2017, the connection between OC and QB was really good. They changed in 18. It was not the same, and the system didn't work for the receivers as well. The running game wasn't as good. And even though they're going to try to run the same system, it's hard to be a copy of the guy before you. And that offensive line thing, I think, is a big deal now, especially with Micah Parsons in the division. If he plays week 1, I still think he probably will, but if he plays week 1, I mean, he could wreak havoc on that team. And Jared Goff's not the same guy when he's under pressure. I think they are the most obvious team that did not get better in the offseason. The only argument I'd make for Detroit, because I still have the order being Detroit, and then Vikings and Packers are kind of on the same plane right now. I think the Vikings are ever so slightly still better. But the reason is because, like, let's not miss the forest through the trees. They're stacked. They've got a ton of weapons. They have a very, very good defensive line, I think, overall. And they got better in the secondary. If Terrion Arnold is better for them, first round pick from last year. They got DJ Reed, who has been kind of an annoyance for the Vikings when they faced him over the years. Like, let's not go completely crazy, but I can see, I mean, they are the regression candidate, I think, at the top of the list. I'm going to say that they go from 15 to like 11, and the same with the Vikings, 14 to like 11, and the Packers kind of stay who they were last year, maybe one win better because you're not facing as easy of a schedule. But I'm not shocked to see the NFL thinking, okay, this team cannot stay as good as they were last year.
I think the key word you said there is the regression. Is they set the bar almost too high for themselves, and it's an impossible standard. So they're not anything they do is probably not going to reach that crazy season that they just had. So it's going to look like a drop off because the expectations are set like so high.
The Robinson rundown. Do you have a favorite game that you're looking forward to this week?
Oh, I still have a lot of people who I know at the NFL. A lot of them were down in Brazil. It's the first game of the season. You got to look at that one, The Eagles taking on the Cowboys, 8:20, Thursday, September 4th.
I don't want to watch the Cowboys, but okay. I mean, I will, but I don't want to. I think, how about this? Let me give you 3 or 4 games. You tell me which one's your favorite.
Okay.
Chiefs, Chargers. Let's see. How about Chiefs, Chargers, Bucks, Falcons, 49ers, Seahawks, Lions, Packers, or Texans, Rams? I think we all know Bills, Ravens is going to be awesome, but which one of those games stands out to you the most?
Okay, so the easy one that I could choose would be the Packers game out of sheer intrigue, okay? Because I want to see it happen just like everyone else does. Is Parsons going to play? What's he going to look like? What's the dynamic like? However, Chiefs, Chargers, that is
always good.
Always good. And for whatever reason, in my mind, I never expect the Chargers to be as good as they actually are. They always surprise me every time I turn on the TV. I'm like, oh, it's you guys again. So I think we had the Chiefs coming off a terrible Super Bowl run. However, they did go to the Super Bowl, so it couldn't have been that bad. And you got the Chargers. These teams, I think this is anyone's game, truthfully. I don't think I can choose a winner here because I don't know what they're going to show up like, but I will be watching.
It's always close between those two teams, and I think the Chargers got better after a playoff year. The Robinson Rundown every Tuesday is the plan throughout the season with Maggie Robinson, former NFL producer and now student on her way to a successful broadcast career. Thank you very much, Maggie. Hey, and make sure everybody go check out your interview with Walt Anderson, NFL referee, longtime NFL referee. It was great, very insightful, and he said the NFL wasn't rigged, so I guess we'll just have to carry on with the season the same way that we always have. Thanks for that one. That was a really good interview, and thanks for your time, Maggie.
Thank you. See ya.
The one thing Maggie still got to remember there is to say football at the end of the interview. She did forget, but a great conversation there with Maggie Robinson. And as far as you guys in the comment section, I see that we're arguing about CJ Ham, which means it's time for me to go make some dinner. I will say that the Vikings will miss some of that 21 personnel of not having CJ Ham early in the season, but having Josh Oliver gives them that dynamic still. Ham also plays every single facet of special teams where he will be missed early in the season. And I don't want to say could be a factor, but he's a special teams leader, and that will matter a lot this year with the kick returning element of the game increasing. And one other question was about Manny and Murph, who are going to be on Thursday, and then we're going to do Monday night roundtables. Mr. Mayer asked what the history of Manny and Murph was. So Manny worked with me at 1500 ESPN. He was Patrick Royce's producer there when I got hired, and then we worked together quite a bit through the years while we were there together. And Brian Murphy worked for the Pioneer Press for a long time as a columnist, was out at Eden Prairie all the time. Maybe I think was on the Wild beat when they moved everything over to TCO Performance Center. So a little bit of a Zimmer era. He covered that quite a bit, and we got to be friends then. Then we play golf all the time. And Murph is just a amazing writer. So he's also part of the newsletter, purpleinsider.football, if you guys go and check that out. Yeah, she's got to go back to the film room. That's totally right. Though she's very funny talking about them cutting Dan Skipper, ruining Morale. That was very funny. But yeah, she'll improve next week. She'll make sure that she says football at the end. And if you're watching the replay here, make sure you answer that FanDuel question of the day down in the comments. That was the over-unders 44.5. Would you rather see it be a shootout, or would you rather see it be a grind fest if the Vikings are going to win? But as far as the first week, Bills-Ravens, clearly the best game on paper at least, but also Houston and the Rams. Like, how healthy is Matthew Stafford? Is he ready to play? Lots of good games, and you get to watch them without the stress of a Vikings game. And then you get all the stress in the world of an island Vikings game on Monday night. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. KOC, McCarthy, Aaron Jones, all talking. Injury update for the first time this season. So we'll have sound from the press conferences. Of course, we'll be there as always. And we will have planned for Kalen Kaler of ESPN to be on, and also Mike Shope with our FanDuel fantasy preview for week 1, which is basically just us kind of trying to figure out how stuff is going to go for the season. And Mike is always really good at what he does. So it'll be a really fun show tomorrow night and the rest of the week, jam-packed with friends of the show, guests, journalists, sound from TCO Performance Center. It's football season, everybody. Let's go. And we'll see you then. Football.